Chapter 1328. Wang Ling's wardrobe could hold a sea of stars. It was a gremlin that had been specially enlightened for space, and could lock onto any corner of the universe. But after the wardrobe was opened, only people with an IQ of over 300 could see the space inside. Hence, Wang Ling's wardrobe was also known as the Emperor's New Wardrobe. It wasn't difficult for Wang Ling to reach the unspeakable land. What Wang Ling hadn't expected was, he would actually come out of the wardrobe with a monk. At that moment, Monk Golden Lamp's heart was filled with despair. Actually, he had expected that if Wang Ling had led the way, Monk Golden Lamp might have reached the unspeakable land much earlier than him. Maybe it would only have taken 3 hours? But the monk had never expected Wang Ling to actually find the unspeakable land in 3 seconds with just one set of coordinates. The huge disparity in strength hurt the monk even more. He felt that he would have to cultivate for at least 300 million lifetimes to reach this level, as expected of Ling Jinren, the fastest man in the universe. Let's go and take a look. Wang Ling spoke telepathically to the monk. Then he stepped into the wardrobe and arrived in space. Tyrant followed closely behind. When he took a step forward, Tyrant's eyes lit up. With a bang, the door of the wardrobe was quickly closed. The monk felt as if he had seen this scene in a detective cartoon before. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the cosmic floating island in front of him, which was wrapped in a layer of light. Even Wang Ling was stunned by this miraculous place which had been created by great magic power. Was that the unspeakable land which Tao ancestor Wang had established? Everything was as the monk had said at the beginning. From a distance, the unspeakable land looked like a golden egg glowing with magic power. The outermost protective light film was relatively easy to break through, and shone on the outside like an eggshell. And the egg yolk was the true form of the unspeakable land. It was a gorgeous floating island which shone with golden light. Looking out in a straight line, he also felt that the unspeakable land was very close to him. But even at this close distance, the monk had tried countless times without being able to smoothly reach its interior. For many years, this had been a great regret in the monk's heart, and a knot which he had been unable to untie. It's not difficult to break through the outer light film. The key is the egg-white layer in the middle. That is the chaos circle, the monk said. The monk had already told him this in the temple before. Wang Ling knew it by heart. Naturally, he understood the stakes. He floated in the air and followed the monk. Then he raised his sword finger and cut a hole on the outermost layer of the light membrane. It was a simple stroke, but it was full of power. The corner of the monk's mouth twitched again. He never thought that Wang Ling would actually be able to enter without using any fancy spells at all, although he could break through the light barrier himself. However, when he first entered, he had to continuously hit the light membrane hundreds of times before he could barely make an opening. What's wrong? Wang Ling felt that the monk's expression wasn't right. It's nothing. I just wanted to say that you're awesome, Taoist master. The monk closed his eyes and made a Buddhist salute. Fortunately, he didn't cultivate his state of mind for nothing. Otherwise, in the face of such a huge disparity, he would have long shut himself in. He successfully entered the second layer of the chaos circle. Wang Ling immediately realized that his body was being battered by the power of primal chaos. Normal cultivators would feel a lot of pain. But Wang Ling was different. He felt like he had stepped into a jacuzzi. It was pretty comfortable. The monk stared at Wang Ling's expression and felt that something wasn't right. He had the urge to flip the table several times in his heart. What the hell was with this glowing face? The monk wouldn't be able to stay in the second layer of the chaos circle for too long. Although he didn't feel any particular discomfort, he wouldn't feel as comfortable as Wang Ling in here. Wang Ling saw the monk's deflated expression. Thinking that the monk couldn't take it anymore, Wang Ling stretched out his hand and hit the monk with a golden light. This was Wang Ling's supreme protective golden light. It could be considered a special exclusive magic artifact. It was just that Wang Ling's body was really too strong, and this golden light usually didn't have much use. Now, it just so happened that it could be used by the monk. With this supreme protective golden light, the monk's ability to resist the power of primal chaos instantly increased. He finally felt the feeling of being soaked in a jacuzzi. Feels so good. Why does it feel so good? The monk couldn't help letting out a sound. It was hard to imagine that an eminent monk could actually show such an expression. Feeling that he couldn't bear to watch, Wang Ling hurriedly took another step forward in an attempt to reach the core area. With one step, he turned himself into an existence of light, and in the blink of an eye, he was able to traverse a long distance. This wasn't shrink to an inch, but a more powerful long-distance movement technique. Wang Ling called it inch of time. With each step Wang Ling took, The monk had to use shrink to an inch 100 times in a row to catch up. This was a little strenuous for the monk. At the same time, he was once again shocked by Wang Ling's power that didn't belong to a human cultivator. The unspeakable land was extremely close to Wang Ling. From what he could see, Wang Ling determined that he only needed to use inch of time, twice to reach the heart of the place. But now he had already taken a whole 10 steps. The unspeakable land was clearly right in front of him, but the distance between them hadn't shortened. Interesting, Wang Ling said softly. In some sense, Dao ancestor Wang, this restriction maniac, had also given Wang Ling a difficult problem. Dao ancestor Wang's restriction reputation is well deserved. Back then this poor monk fought and lost again and again. I wonder if coming here with Ling Jinren today will fulfill this poor monk's long-cherished wish of entering the unspeakable land. At that moment, the monk sighed and stared at Wang Ling. Given Jinren's strength, it shouldn't be hard for you to undo the restriction, right? The monk was testing the waters. If Wang Ling wanted to undo it, he naturally could. It was just that restrictions were very complicated and Wang Ling had already made an analogy long ago. It was like a math problem. The best way to solve it was to work backward. But this would take a very, very long time. In fact, given the urgency of the moment, Wang Ling didn't have much time left. Too troublesome. Wang Ling shook his head slightly in response to the monk. Even Jinren finds it troublesome. The monk's face was instantly disappointed. But before he could comment further, he heard Wang Ling say, "Just directly cover it." Cover it? The monk's eyes lit up and he turned pale with shock. Jinren, do you mean to directly cover Dao ancestor Wang's restriction? Wang Ling nodded. This was the most convenient method he could think of. The analysis process was too troublesome. It would be better to create a new restriction and replace the old one. Wang Ling stretched out his hand, and a huge reddish gold light was released from his palm. This light covered the entire unspeakable land. About 3 minutes later, Wang Ling put down his hand. It's done? The monk was blank. It's done. Wang Ling nodded. The modification to the restriction had been completed. What did you change it to? The monk was curious. Anyone who can withstand more than 10 of my palm strikes, inclusive, can enter, Wang Ling said telepathically. Chapter 1329. On the other side, in the War Sect seclusion cellar, room 331. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch used the guide spell to transfer the medical pod here. Currently lying in the true sovereign hall of the battle sect was another fake body of Lotus Sunday Immortal Jinyuan, and Miss Awan stood guard in the hall. Out of consideration for the safety of the real body, this was a temporary, nesting camouflage technique. Although it might not be effective, it was at least a form of protection. How many bodies did Boss Luo build for junior sister Lotus Sun? Ajwa was stunned. She was finally in close contact with Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Looking at his face, which looked extremely similar to Wang Ling's, the girl hesitated to speak. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch is a very amiable person. Junior sister, if you want to ask anything, you don't have to be polite. Ajwa smiled encouragingly from the side. That? She looked at the youth in front of her and asked politely, Senior, have we met somewhere before? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch thought for a moment, then answered truthfully, 9 Dragon Mountain, the body technique competition. Body technique competition. Lotus Sun thought carefully, and suddenly recalled a scene that was indeed very different from Wang Ling's usual style of doing things. Senior, did you substitute for student Wang Ling when you were writing the essay? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was slightly surprised by the girl's extremely quick thinking ability. But since he had already been exposed, there was naturally no need to hide it. That's right, I was indeed substituting for Little Master Ling when he was writing his essay. At that time he was fighting with his own shadow in space. I knew it. How could classmate Wang Ling's essay suddenly get such a high mark? Lotus Sun smiled happily. It turns out that Senior is a speck of dust in this era. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch scratched his head, still a little embarrassed. Miss Sun, you must be joking. I was just performing normally, I didn't expect this to happen. This matter has caused a lot of trouble for Master. Suppressing the score is indeed a technical job. Lotus Sun nodded and couldn't agree anymore. I can't learn it either. It's easy to get 100 marks, but it's really too hard to get an average. How did you deduce that Master was swapped while he was writing his essay? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch asked curiously at that moment. It's very simple. First, the characters are different. The girl replied very casually, Senior wrote the composition in student Wang Ling's place in the competition. Although the handwriting was very nice, it clearly wasn't student Wang Ling's handwriting. Classmate Wang Ling had a thin gold body. As for senior's words, I have the fatty golden form. Right. It just feels a little thicker than usual. My handwriting is only slightly thicker than master's. Then may I ask Miss Sun, is there anything else that's different? Of course. Lotus Sun nodded. Everyone is communicating with each other when writing essays. I felt that senior seemed to be especially talkative that day. But I only said 3 sentences. Compared with classmate Wang Ling's usual silence, this is already an obvious anomaly. AI. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch sighed. He hadn't expected his best imitation of Wang Ling to still reveal a flaw. But I think it's pretty good. Senior doesn't have to deliberately imitate classmate Wang Ling. At that moment, Lotus Sun smiled. When I communicate with senior now, it feels like I'm talking to one of classmate Wang Ling's personalities. As long as Miss Sun is happy. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch smiled. Lotus Sun found it very interesting that he was clearly different from Wang Ling himself. She had imagined countless times what the King Ling looked like when he smiled. Senior, can you smile again? At that moment she took out her drawing tools. She wanted to find traces of Wang Ling's smile on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. No problem. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was very cooperative and smiled naturally. His eyes were curved and his teeth were white. Elsewhere, Wang Ying dashed out of the Wang family's small villa. He didn't stop until he was deep in the western part of the Milky Way. He began to realize that something wasn't right. If Miss Sun Ying was heading for the unspeakable land, the coordinates for the unspeakable land were east of the Milky Way. It was in a completely different direction from this place. Have you finally noticed? But it's too late. A cold voice rang out in the air. Countless black shadows around them turned into hair-like substances that drifted in the air and finally condensed into the figure of a girl. The Sun Ying in front of him looked exactly the same as Lotus Sun, but like Wang Ying, she also had white hair. Her long white hair was even longer than her body, like strands of ice hanging upside down. Complete void form. Wang Ying frowned slightly. He had a bad feeling about Sun Ying's aura. Sure enough, everything was as they had guessed at the beginning. Student Lotus Sun's main body was temporarily stuck in a state of void transformation due to the separation of her body and soul. However, her shadow had completely turned into nothingness. Furthermore, Wang Ying could sense that the energy in Miss Sun Ying's body was astonishing, far beyond that of an ordinary hollow spirit. If they really fought, wouldn't she be a difficult opponent? Sun Ying? Wang Ying looked at the girl in front of him. Don't call me Sun Ying, I'm Sun Yinger. It's fine if you call me Ying. Sun Yinger said, I've been her shadow for too long, I've long wanted to get rid of her. Do you want to copy what I did when I took over her body? As a shadow, Wang Ying could more or less understand what Sun Yinger was thinking. Let me tell you, that's impossible. If you want to devour her, seizing her body is the key. But in Battle Sect, Miss Sun has too many people protecting her. And you'll be dragged here by me or even defeated. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to defeat me. Sun Yinger smiled. You probably don't know about my shadow image ability, do you? Wang Ying frowned. My shadow image is the mother of division. I can split myself into many parts. Moreover, all of my split bodies have the same amount of energy as me. That's impossible. Theoretically speaking, it's indeed impossible. Because the split bodies won't have the same amount of energy as the main body. But don't forget, I'm a child of the void. There's an inexhaustible amount of energy in the void. Sun Yinger smiled. With the power of the void, my shadow image ability has become even more astonishing. You mean? At this point, Wang Ying finally realized what the problem was. That's right, what you've been chasing is just my split body. Sun Yinger looked at Wang Ying with an expression that said she had everything under control. And my main body is still hiding on Earth. At the same time, a white-haired girl exuding a dangerous aura appeared at the gate of Battle Sect. She opened her palm, and a pure white snow lotus mixed with the power of the void appeared in her palm, spinning slightly. Rong Rong, return to the void with me. Sun Yinger's smile hit a dagger as she threw the snow lotus. In the void, the spinning snow lotus contained astonishing energy, and then it exploded, instantly illuminating the entire night sky. Chapter 1330. The petals of the void snow lotus bloomed in the air, and an endless amount of void energy instantly formed a huge devouring force, burning a huge hole in the entire space. Shattered buildings, mountain rocks, and rubble were all sucked into the hole created by the explosion. There were even many battle sect disciples who were extremely close to the core area and could not escape in time. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The disciples of the battle sect immediately noticed that something was wrong. The alarms that covered the entire sect immediately rang. A bunch of trash. Sun Yinger ignored the disciples who were rushing out of the battle sect. With a wave of her hand, she destroyed the forbidden array that the battle sect disciples had set up together. You want to trap me with a forbidden array of this level? Too naive. Sun Yinger was too lazy to care about these battle sect disciples who were jumping around. Bus. She released an aura of the void, which was so strong that it could shake one's soul. The disciples of the battle sect that were floating in the void were like falling meteors. They fell heavily onto the ground and sank into the pit, unable to get up no matter how hard they tried. Under such intense pressure, every disciple's heart trembled. He felt as if he was a firefly competing with the sun and moon, extremely lowly. Isn't this Miss Lotus Sun? What's going on? A hen. The disciples of the battle sect were puzzled. The sudden attack had already left them dumbfounded. There's already one lying here. Why was there another one outside? As expected of Senior Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, it's exactly as he thought. She's here. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan sensed strong energy fluctuations outside the true venerated Great Hall. Humph. No matter who comes, I will protect Lady Sun's body. Lady Awan took out the feather sword of the God Realm and waited solemnly. It wasn't without reason that he was so concerned. She hoped to take advantage of this opportunity to get closer to Wang Ling. Earth had indeed upgraded. Divine Dao Star was still poor. If Divine Dao Star wanted to take a step forward, it would only be possible with Wang Ling's power. So in essence, this was also one of Lady Awan's little schemes as the Realm King of the God Realm. What are our chances of winning if we join forces? Immortal Jinyuan asked. Let's not talk about whether she can win or not, but she definitely won't be able to gain an advantage. Miss Awan was full of confidence. Although she was still a very weak Immortal World King. However, he couldn't just dismiss a legal lowly like her as a cadre. Once she fully matured, her battle prowess would be formidable. We have to lure her somewhere else. Our sect has only just been built, and her explosion just now directly destroyed a building worth 300 million immortal gold. Immortal Jinyuan wiped at his sweat. At this moment, Sun Yinger's figure appeared in front of the hall. Then, right in front of Immortal Jinyuan, Sun Yinger split into two. Split body? Immortal Jinyuan and Miss Awan were shocked at the same time. More importantly, the energy contained in the split body was not inferior to the main body at all. It was almost exactly the same. I'm afraid that the other party has already noticed that the fleshly body in this true venerate hall has been replaced. Lady Awan frowned. Director Zhua, Death Heavenly Dao and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch are underground. My main body's target is there. Looks like we have to get rid of these two clones as soon as possible. Let's head over to support them. In the spiritual space, Miss Awan and Immortal Jinyuan were talking. Sun Yinger was far more troublesome than they had imagined. You want to go and help? No way. The two Sun Yingers who had appeared in the true venerate hall had a clear goal. Each of them targeted an opponent and started a one-on-one contest. In order not to continue causing more damage to Battle Sect, Immortal Jinyuan and Miss Awan reacted in sync. Both of them took out their inner worlds at the same time. It was as if Sun Yinger was a doll in a trap. The purpose of the split bodies was just to delay the battle and prevent reinforcements from happening. For Sun Yinger, this was already a complete success. Before coming to Battle Sect, she had already figured out the ins and outs of everyone here. Not a single person could escape. The only troublesome characters in Battle Sect were probably Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was in the middle of retrieving a sword. That was right, Jinka and Bai Qiao were in Fatty Luo's shop for maintenance. The situation over there was probably similar to that of Immortal Jinyuan and the others. To be on the safe side, Sun Yinger had sent a total of 10 split bodies over. Even with Jinka and Bai Qiao, it would be enough to stall for a while. It actually wasn't hard to destroy her, but the key was that she could borrow the energy of the void to replicate and split herself without limit. And this was also one of Sun Yinger's biggest trump cards. Even if the entire earth is destroyed, I'll take you with me, Rongrong. At that moment, Sun Yinger looked up at the sky. Before her ultimate trump card was completely revealed, she still needed to stall for a while more. The energy of the void was still 60% short of being complete. When that time came, she would make the final judgment on Earth in the name of the new master. Spirit of Earth? In the cellar where Battle Sect was in seclusion, The huge energy fluctuations on the ground were transmitted directly to the depths of the earth. All the seclusion rooms were shaking. That's amazing. The Son of the Void is so terrifying. Death Heavenly Tao frowned deeply. He never expected the Son of the Void to actually contain such astonishing energy. Senior, what are your chances of winning? Ajwa asked worriedly. He had fought Su Ling before and knew very well how powerful they were. But the enormous energy hidden in Sun Yinger's body wasn't something Su Ling could match. This seems to be stronger than the Lord of the Void. Death Heavenly Tao was astonished. Why is that? The Void probably has an inheritance system. Once a Son of the Void is formed, the Lord of the Void's energy will start to transfer, and this inheritance ceremony should have started a long time ago, Death Heavenly Tao guessed. Otherwise Miss Sun's shadow wouldn't have been able to reach its complete form so quickly. So that's to say, once the Lord of the Void finishes transferring all his energy, Junior Sister Sun's shadow will be the next Lord of the Void? That's absolutely it. What's more troublesome is that Miss Sun's shadow seems to have the ability to split. Combined with the endless void energy in the void, she can theoretically duplicate and split her original body without limit. Duplicate and split her original body without limit. Ajwa was startled. Wouldn't Wang Ying be very happy in the future? Boom. At that moment, another huge hole appeared in front of them. Sun Yinger's original body appeared here. They were 3,600 meters below the ground. There was a groundhog sealed in this water tower, and now there's a humanoid groundhog. Ajwa wiped at his sweat. Inside the golden lotus, the corners of Lotus Sun's mouth twitched as she felt a little offended. Rong, come back with me. That way we can avoid a lot of deaths. At that moment, Sun Yinger stared at Lotus Sun inside the golden lotus with a smile on her face. Don't listen to her, Miss Lotus Sun. At that moment, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch stood up and stared at Sun Yinger. My battle strength isn't as good as Master's, but don't underestimate me. Really? Even if the earth is destroyed it doesn't matter? Sun Yinger smiled. As long as Master is here, so be it. In any case it can be repaired, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch said resolutely. Spirit of the Earth? Chapter 1331. Something had happened at War Sect. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in Fatty Luo's shop. However, he could also feel a powerful energy fluctuation coming from the direction of the battle sect. Brother Luo, can you hurry up? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. The maintenance process must not be interrupted. This was one of Boss Luo's nursing rules. Boss Luo naturally wouldn't be careless when it came to Jinka's maintenance. Listening to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's tone, it seemed that something really big had happened at Battle Sect. Fatty Luo could only speed up the work at hand. Senior Immortal, don't worry, it'll be done soon. Although that was what he said, he still felt a little reluctant in his heart. Jinka and Bai Qiao, mainly Jinka. It was rare for Wang Ling to take care of them. He hadn't had enough yet and he was about to be taken away again. How could he cultivate? When Fatty Luo finished applying the last layer of lubricating oil, he quickly separated the sword blade and scabbard into Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's left and right hands. At the same time, Fatty Luo was also frowning deeply. Senior Immortal, don't you feel that energy fluctuation seems to be getting closer? Something was definitely not right. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned deeply. He held Jinka and Bai Qiao. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a row of white-haired Sun Yinger standing neatly at the door, smiling at him. There were at least 10 of them. You are Miss Sun's shadow? Combined with what had happened earlier, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal instantly understood what was going on. Monk Jin Deng had long predicted that Sun Yinger might do something bad to Zhan Zong, which was why he had asked him to take Jinka and Bai Qiao out of Boss Luo's shop ahead of time. He hadn't expected Monk Jin Deng to be so serious. Furthermore, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal guessed right away that the 10 Sun Yinger in front of him were probably split bodies of Sun Yinger's Shadow Dao ability. Every single one of them had such a huge amount of energy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never expected this. As expected of a true monarch. Looks like you've already guessed everything. The 10 Sun Yinger clones spoke in unison. The speed and intonation of their voices were exactly the same, as if there were 10 repeaters playing at the same time. What's your purpose? The main counterattack is to bring Rong back to the void. Do you think you can get away with it so easily? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Jinka and Bai Qiao were here. Even if there were 100 Sun Yingers, he would not feel afraid. You can give it a try, true sovereign. At that moment, the 10 Sun Yingers stretched out their hands at the same time, and the black shadows in their hands sprang forth from all directions to completely engulf grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in a pitch-black world. This was Shadow's inner world. Every doppelganger could use the power of this inner world. Now, with 10 Sun Yingers releasing their inner worlds at the same time, the inner world surface area also instantly increased, becoming 10 times its original size. Her goal was only to prolong the battle. Even if Immortal Jinyuan and Miss Awan sucked her into the core world, Sun Yinger had nothing to fear. But the opponent she was facing now wasn't just grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. The peachwood sword and scabbard in the man's hands were the biggest threat. So after careful consideration, the clone Sun Yinger immediately decided to make the first move and swallow grenade-throwing Senior Immortal into her inner world, thus realizing the brilliant plan of trapping the dog behind closed doors. After being sucked into the pitch-black inner world, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help feeling shaken. The 10 clones of Sun Yinger had an astonishing amount of energy. Now that they were stacked together, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it hard to breathe. As soon as he came to the inner world, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, as if the weight of several mountains had fallen heavily on his shoulders. Lord Jinka, Lord Bai Qiao. Don't sleep anymore. It's time to get up and go to work. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal roared. Then he abruptly sheathed Jinka. This was the greatest crisis battle sect had ever faced since its founding, and almost all the core members were fighting Sun Yinger's clone. Wang Ling was also aware of this. Jinren, do you want to go back and take a look? Monk asked. He was also worried about battle sect's situation. Wang Ling shook his head. Now wasn't the time for him to make a move. As long as he was here, naturally he could ensure Lotus Sun's safety. Sun Yinger was a good opponent. She was strong enough and could also split. In Wang Ling's view, this could be considered an experience for all the core members of Battle Sect. Although Sun Yinger was formidable, it wouldn't be easy to take her away just like that. Seeing that Wang Ling had his own considerations, Monk Golden Lamp naturally couldn't say anything more. Wang Ling had finally arrived at the legendary Unspeakable Land. This dazzling floating island in the universe was filled with an aura constructed from supreme nomological laws, which stirred one's mind. As expected of a place created by a Tao ancestor. The monk could already sense the powerful aura of heavenly Tao seeping out from inside. Although these heavenly Tao were defective, they were the original versions of ancient heavenly Tao. He had finally come in. It was all thanks to Ling Jinren. His wish for so many years had finally come true in this moment. The monk felt a knot in his heart that had been holding him back for a long time finally melt like 1,000 years of ice. A warm feeling welled up in the monk's heart. Wang Ling saw that Monk Golden Lamp's entire body was emitting the golden light of Buddha. This was a sign of epiphany. After entering the unspeakable land, the monk had actually directly gained epiphany because the knot in his heart had been resolved. Wang Ling was slightly astonished at the scene in front of him. I'm back, everything is back. At that moment, the monk was sitting cross-legged on the shore of the unspeakable land, his whole body shrouded in the light of Buddha. He exuded the kind of Buddhist power that could deliver all living beings from suffering and transcend the nirvana realm. Was this the most holy of Buddhism? Wang Ling felt that he had learned something new. As expected of a man who could withstand 10 of his palms. Furthermore, Wang Ling noticed that the monk's battle strength was gradually recovering, and was even stronger than before. Previously, the monk had lost the cultivation of 3,000 lifetimes and a swastika, and had only been able to see a trace of Wang Ling's outline. At that time, Wang Ling had wanted to return the lost cultivation to the monk, but the monk had tactfully refused. Now, after the epiphany, the light of Buddhism on the monk's body had actually caused this lost power to actually return. Through the king's eye, Wang Ling could clearly see the 3 Buddhist fires in the monk's heart at that moment. Buddha fire of the past, Buddha fire of the present, and Buddha fire of the future. So that was it. Wang Ling already understood what on earth had happened in the monk's body. The power of epiphany had stimulated the monk to give birth to the Buddha fire of the past, which allowed the lost power to be recovered. Even the 10 lifetimes of cultivation he had lost in the forsaken land of the gods had been recovered. The Buddha fire of the present had caused the monk to have a great epiphany, which had consolidated his realm and stopped the loss of his cultivation. Simply put, if the monk used the swastika to spy on Wang Ling now, he would definitely be blinded. He would definitely be blinded, but it would no longer affect his cultivation. Finally, the Buddha fire of the future had allowed the monk's cultivation to advance even further, and he had comprehended a new Buddhist palm technique. It's all thanks to Ling Jinren. You gave this poor monk a chance to have an epiphany. A few minutes later, the enlightened monk finally stood up and thanked Wang Ling sincerely. If you have the time, please hit me a few more times. I want to test whether my cultivation really won't be affected. Wang Ling. Wang Ling felt that the monk should give himself a light bulb. Chapter 1332. At that moment, Wang Ling stood on the golden shoreline of the unspeakable land. He sensed Tao Ancestor Wang using the supreme nomological laws to construct this floating cosmic island buried deep in the eastern part of the Milky Way. It could only be said that Tao Ancestor Wang was indeed Tao Ancestor Wang. Wang Ling had never seen a nomological construction like this. It was tantamount to creating a huge core world outside. There were a lot of things constructed using nomological laws. For example, an intrinsic spirit field for a true immortal was constructed from nomological laws. Most true immortals could do it if they wanted to. That was because an intrinsic spirit field wasn't particularly large. If the nomological laws were a little more complicated, that was the core world. In the traditional sense, it was an upgraded version of the intrinsic spirit field. Whether it was in terms of nomological composition or scale, it was far superior to an intrinsic spirit field. At the true immortal realm, only a very small number of people were able to create a core world. As for moving the core world out of the body, that was even more unimaginable. The unspeakable land that Tao Ancestor Wang had created was at the very least on the scale of 100 million true immortal core worlds. Not only could he construct such a huge core world outside, he could also maintain the stability of the world here for a long time without it collapsing. This was indeed an unimaginably powerful technique. He felt that he had learned a lot from this observation. The world was so big, for Wang Ling going out to see more was also growth. And now, the unspeakable land was already nothing for him to see, because he had already finished reading it. Wang Ling slowly raised his hand. The monk thought this action was a little familiar. Jinren, what are you doing? Empty it. Wang Ling's answer was concise. Jinren, you're not going to go in and take a look? The monk was startled. I'm done reading it. The monk was speechless. He sighed in his heart. This was probably the difference between a top student and a bad student. A top student only needed one glance to know the answer to the same question. As a bad student, he had to do in-depth research and analyze the question type before he could solve it. It could only be said that as expected of Ling Jinren. At that moment, the monk once again felt the deep gap between him and Wang Ling. Ling Jinren's awesome, broken voice was no longer enough to describe this gap. It should be, Ling Jinren, forever God. Seeing the monk's thirst for knowledge written all over his face, Wang Ling finally put down his hand. Although destroying the unspeakable land was their ultimate goal in coming here. But since victory was already in his grasp, it didn't matter if it was destroyed a little later. Since the monk wanted to take a look, Wang Ling naturally had to accommodate his wishes. After all, he still needed the monk in the future. Furthermore, although Sun Yinger was coming at them aggressively, Wang Ling felt that the core members of Battle Sect weren't at a disadvantage. If he destroyed the unspeakable land and returned to join the battle, it would be too boring. For Wang Ling, that was a battle that could be settled in a matter of seconds. Thank you for fulfilling my wish, Ling Jinren. Jin Deng was extremely grateful. Wang Ling replied indifferently, not paying much attention to it. Since the monk wanted to see it, he would definitely satisfy the monk's wish. At the same time, he split 50% of his attention to peek at the ongoing battle on Earth. Over there. The fight had already begun. At the same time, in the depths of the unspeakable land, an evil metal man with 3 heads and 6 arms woke up. In its shrunken state, it was still 10 meters tall. This gigantic evil golden man was none other than the master of the unspeakable land. Nickname, Primordial Heavenly Tao. Of course, it wasn't Tao Ancestor Wang who had given it this nickname, but the evil golden man himself. I sense a very powerful aura. The evil golden man opened its eyes, and the 3 marks engraved in ancient characters between its eyebrows glowed faintly at that moment. Translated in modern terms, it actually meant 0 and 1. That was right, this gigantic evil golden man. It was the earliest heavenly Tao to be born in the unspeakable land. It was also the first heavenly Tao that Tao Ancestor Wang had developed after creating the heavenly Tao. Although in the end, 001 wasn't activated. It was forever sealed in the unspeakable land by Tao Ancestor Wang. But for the entire history of heavenly Tao, there was no doubt that 001 held a pivotal position. After Tao ancestor Wang had sealed all the defective heavenly Tao products he had developed in the unspeakable land, just like that, 001 changed its name to Primordial Heavenly Tao. It became the boss of the unspeakable land. It became the master of this place. Lord Island Master, someone has landed on the island. It's a monk and a young man. The little evil golden man on the side came forward and inquired. There were also numbers engraved in ancient characters on their foreheads, but these numbers were very large. Some were 3-digit, some were 4-digit, there were even 6-digit and 7-digit numbers. Rumor had it that the current heavenly Tao, back then, Tao ancestor Wang had carefully selected 30,000 of them from tens of millions of test subjects. Tao ancestor Wang had evenly distributed the 30,000 heavenly Tao across the 10 universes. Then he had separated the 3,000 heavenly Tao and set up a combined restriction so that the 3,000 heavenly Tao of the 10 universes would check and balance each other. The primordial heavenly Tao turned its gaze to the edge of the island. It saw the monk and Wang Ling. I recognize this monk. The primordial heavenly Tao had actually heard of the origin of the golden lamp. He smiled coldly. I remember that this monk had always wanted to enter this place a long time ago. In the end, he was unable to break through Tao ancestors' restriction. Who would have thought that in this cycle of time, this monk would actually succeed one day? The main reason why the primordial heavenly Tao had been roused was mostly because of monk golden lamp. That's right, he had only sensed the monk's aura before he had been roused. As for Wang Ling, who is this teenager? His disciple? The primordial heavenly Tao had never seen Wang Ling before. Island Master, what should we do now? This monk isn't easy to deal with. No matter how many people you send, I'm afraid it'll be useless. The primordial heavenly Tao yawned. I think I should do it myself. The unspeakable isn't a place that anyone can come and go as they please. It was just a monk and his disciple. The primordial heavenly Tao didn't care about these two people who had broken into the unspeakable at all. He had been dominating this place for too long. As the longest living heavenly Tao golden man of all the heavenly Tao, the primordial heavenly Tao was very confident in his own strength. At the same time, he had been sealed in the unspeakable for too long. Actually, his understanding of the outside world was very limited. Although some of the evil golden men who had been released from the crack had come back to report on the situation, it would take a very long time for them to go back and forth. Previously, some of the evil golden men on Earth had also wanted to report on Wang Ling to the unspeakable. Unfortunately, Wang Ling had destroyed those evil metal men with one click. They didn't know Wang Ling. It was probably this primordial heavenly Tao. Chapter 1333. Deep in the west of the Milky Way, starstones surged and space cracked. A fierce battle between two shadows was taking place here. Wang Ying's palm contained boundless power as he ruthlessly slammed the split Sun Yinger into the nearest planet. The moment she was sent flying, the girl's figure turned into a meteor and abruptly pierced through the core of the planet. Boom! The planet exploded, and the girl's figure disappeared into space. How troublesome! Wang Ying withdrew his palm. This was already the 8th time he had killed a split body. However, Sun Yinger's ability to replicate and split was beyond Wang Ying's imagination. After killing one Sun Yinger, another split body would immediately appear to continue fighting him. Give up, Wang Ying. The girl's laughter echoed in the air. Wang Ying saw a black curse mark streak across the girl's tall nose and spread down her face to her entire body. This was Sun Yinger's split seal. Every time the girl died, it would automatically activate and split into a new Sun Yinger. I know Wang Ling is very powerful. But right now he's in the unspeakable land. Sun Yinger said with a confident expression. It's easy to get in there but hard to get out. Wang Ying was silent. He was sure that Sun Yinger definitely didn't know that Wang Ling had already modified the restriction on the unspeakable land. If it had been Tao ancestor Wang's restriction, of course it wouldn't have been easy for Wang Ling to get out. But now Wang Ling himself had already covered this restriction. In other words, the unspeakable land had already changed owners. It was impossible for a normal person to directly cover Tao ancestor Wang's restriction to do such a heaven-defying operation. Thus, after Wang Ying heard this, he even thought it was a little ridiculous. Sun Yinger was too confident. She had been tricked and didn't know it. This was the greatest tragedy. At that moment, the split-body Sun Yinger was still in front of him, spouting nonsense. Now your master is trapped in the unspeakable land, and my split body is delaying everyone. Just wait for my final blow and the earth will instantly disintegrate. Battle Sect has already suffered a crushing defeat. I don't know what's the point of continuing to fight. Sure enough, the personality of the shadow and the original is very different. Wang Ying sneered. Sun Yinger's inexplicable confidence made him laugh. Unlike the main body, Lotus Sun's confidence was genuine, and definitely not the conceited kind. In comparison, Sun Yinger seemed a little excessive. Overconfidence was ignorant pride. To conquer this object of pride. For Wang Ying, there was actually a great sense of accomplishment. Woman, you are playing with fire. At this moment, Wang Ying looked at Sun Yinger and took a deep breath. You might not know this, but my ability is actually also replication. The split Sun Yinger laughed. You can also split like me? Even if you could, you're not a member of the Void, so where would you get so much energy to use? Wang Ying stopped talking nonsense. In the next moment, a scene that caused the split-body Sun Yinger to turn pale with shock occurred. Right in front of his eyes, Wang Ying had actually split himself into dozens. Moreover, the energy of each split body was no different from Wang Ying himself. Don't forget my ability. I can replicate everything except my Lord's King's eye. Wang Ying stared at Sun Yinger and smiled. It had taken some time to replicate Sun Yinger's split ability, but fortunately, everything was under control. As for the energy needed for the split bodies? Forget about him. The man who was currently in the unspeakable land. The energy contained in his body was more than the energy of 10, 100, 1,000 or 10,000 void worlds put together. Only Wang Ying clearly knew. His lord. A man who would never be squeezed dry. 5 minutes earlier, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was also in a predicament in Battle Sect. He was facing Sun Yinger's original body, which was even more difficult to deal with than the split body. Audiobook had already lent him advance. But the battle strength of the real clone was limited, and just withstanding the pressure from the original body was already very taxing for Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Audiobook and Death Heavenly Dao carefully protected the girl in the Golden Lotus. With the help of the 33-path primordial chi, Audiobook opened all the remaining gates from the fight against the Hollow Spirits last time, and worked with Death Heavenly Dao to set up a defensive array. They firmly protected her in the Golden Light Shield. Lotus Sun was moved. In front of her, there was what she could see and what she couldn't. Everyone was protecting her. But in her soul state, she could only watch helplessly and couldn't do anything. She couldn't stop the crazy Sun Yinger from launching a fierce attack on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Junior sister Lotus Sun, don't think too much. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. This battle wasn't going to be easy, but Audiobook tried his best to speak in a relaxed tone. The worst thing to do at a time like this was to be shaken. Shadow was the kind of person who liked to mess around. Once the girl lost her composure, Sun Yinger would definitely take advantage of it. Audiobook's words seemed to wake the girl up, and her pupils trembled. Senior Zhua, I'll hold on. Realization dawned on her. Everyone in front of her was fighting for her, then she shouldn't give up so easily. She also shouldn't have the thought of returning to the void with Sun Yinger. The pure white petals of the snow lotus quickly fell from the air. Under the high-speed movement, these gentle petals became deadly sharp objects. They cut through the air as they passed through the void. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch held advance in his hand to block. He stabbed it into the ground. Bzzz. Bam. A dense forest of crystal bamboo hundreds of meters tall was instantly uprooted from the ground. These crystal bamboos were extremely hard and formed a thick defensive barrier. But the power of the snow lotus petals was unparalleled, and they rushed forward in droves. Countless bamboos were instantly cut down into bamboo joints, which finally turned into particles of light and disappeared. These particles of light landed on the ground, and in the end, new crystal bamboos grew out. The Son of the Void is too strong. Audiobook marveled in his heart. A complete Son of the Void was too powerful. And this didn't seem to be Sun Yinger's full strength. She was currently absorbing the energy transmitted by the Lord of the Void. As time went on, her overall battle strength would soar. Second sword in the world is too weak, Death Heavenly Dao ridiculed on the side. Senior, don't be so poisonous. It's not because he's weak, but because he was stimulated last time and hasn't come back to his senses yet. Stimulated? It's all because of Lord Jingbai. After spending so much time in advance, he finally chose Fan Rui as his master, but in the end, Fan Rui directly took him to the only man he couldn't beat. That's not all. That man even found his scabbard. I understand. Understanding dawned on Death Heavenly Dao. It turned out that this single dog had been dealt a critical blow. No wonder he wasn't performing well and was dispirited. Logically speaking, if advance had been a little more serious, Even if Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's battle strength wasn't good, he wouldn't have been suppressed by advance. Rip. At that moment, pure white petals pierced through the dense bamboo forest and accurately hit Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's right eye. Blood instantly flowed down. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch pressed down on his eye and used advance to support his body. Rong Rong, I said that I would definitely take you away. Sun Yinger had a relaxed smile on her face. She looked up at the sky and muttered under her breath. Void energy. 97%, 98%. 100%. Everything was already over. At that moment, Sun Yinger rose into the air. She knew very well that the moment for her to play her final trump card had arrived. In a split second, a tremendous sense of oppression that covered the entire earth descended. It was the tremendous pressure of a sovereign descending upon the world. Even a true immortal cultivator couldn't withstand the pressure and fell to his knees, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. Sun Yinger had successfully become brand new, the Lord of the Void. Chapter 1334. The full power of the Void Master. The immense pressure that was as vast as the sea of stars caused the entire earth to fall into a state of suffocation. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was injured, and his body could no longer withstand such tremendous pressure. The entire situation seemed to have turned into a rout. Bang! The golden light shield created by Audiobook and Death Heavenly Dao shattered like glass. The two of them coughed up blood and knelt on the ground. Sun Yinger hovered in the air. With a gentle lift of her hand, she swept up the Heavenly Dao of Death from the ground. The power of the void broke through the door of the inner world and forcibly pulled the Buddha Golden Lotus out of the Death Heavenly Dao's abdomen. The immense pain of forcibly breaking into the core world and seizing what was inside made Death Heavenly Dao cry out in agony. His face was pale, and he felt as if his body was about to be torn apart by Sun Yinger. Sun Yinger's target was only the Buddha Golden Lotus. With a wave of her hand, she casually tossed the Death Heavenly Dao into the distance. Death Heavenly Dao's body passed through several large mountains. Boom. For a time, the mud flow collapsed, emitting an earth-shattering tremor. Rong Rong, we can finally be together. Sun Yinger held the golden lotus in her hands and looked at the girl inside. At the same time, a curious look appeared on his face. Huh? You don't seem to be afraid at all? Could it be that you've already prepared to fuse with me? You won't succeed. Lotus Sun pursed her lips. They actually trapped you in the golden lotus. That's too much. Rong Rong, just wait, I'll free you now. As soon as she finished speaking, Sun Yinger suddenly exerted force and completely crushed the golden lotus with her bare hands. The young girl's soul immediately turned into a stream of light and returned to her body. This was the first step to returning to the void. Only after returning to his physical body could the inheritance ceremony officially begin. Therefore, even if Wang Ying found a way to stop the split, it was already too late. I'm already very angry. I hope you're prepared to pay the price. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch used the last of his strength to stand in front of the girl. Lotus Sun saw it. At that moment, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was trembling all over. The blood gushing out from his injured right arm had already soaked his clothes. Senior Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, don't come over. Miss Sun, you're standing right behind me. No one can get close to you. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was at the very front, firmly protecting the girl behind him. I didn't expect you to be able to dance. Sun Yinger's expression was still relaxed and proud. It's just a trick. This is already the last attack. The void energy in the universe had finished gathering. Next, all she had to do was summon the gate of the void and aim it at Earth. A single shot of the ultimate void apocalypse cannon could easily destroy the entire Earth. But now, she saw a doppelganger trying to salvage this predestined situation. This made Sun Yinger laugh from the bottom of her heart. You're just a real clone. Even if you have a portion of that man's power, you're still no match for me. As for that man, he's already trapped in the unspeakable land and won't be able to return anytime soon. As she spoke, Sun Yinger was also enjoying the look on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's face as he withstood the immense pressure she was putting on him. She knew. This man couldn't hold on any longer. The immense pressure from the Lord of the Void was exerted on all the cultivators on Earth at the same time. Only Lotus Sun was unaffected. After her soul returned to her body was already transforming into that of a son of the void, and she was naturally immune to this pressure. Stop holding on, Neo. Sun Yinger's trademark expression, which hid a dagger behind her smile, was especially horrifying after becoming the Lord of the Void. She stretched out her finger and pressed it down. She wanted to see Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch kneel in submission in front of her. But in the next moment, something happened that Sun Yinger didn't expect. The man's knees were already bent to the extreme and he was about to fall to his knees. In that moment, it was as if he was ignoring the pressure as he straightened his back and stood up again. Oh? Sun Yinger frowned and felt that something wasn't right. She couldn't figure it out. How could a clone who was already seriously injured stand up again? Is Earth going to blow up again? In Sun Yinger's dark inner world, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt a strong fluctuation of energy coming from the outside world. He didn't need to know. Something big had happened on Earth. But what was worse was that he couldn't get out of this inner world at all. Sun Yinger's 10 clones were too difficult to deal with. He had already awakened Jinka and Bai Qiao. Given Jingbai's strength, he could naturally kill a child with one slash of his sword. But Sun Yinger's unlimited splits gave grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Jingbai a headache. Why did it feel like they were playing Unlimited Fruit Ninja? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Jingbai roared in their hearts. Give up. Earth is about to be destroyed and everything will turn to ash, the 10 Sun Yinger clones said in unison. They were exulting in the triumph of their purpose. Don't celebrate too early. At that moment, a familiar voice rang out in the inner world. Behind the 10 Sun Yinger clones, 10 Wang Ying clones suddenly appeared. They grabbed Sun Yinger's head in each hand. You. Sun Yinger clones were shocked. She didn't understand how Wang Ying had been able to appear in her inner world. What shocked Sun Ying even more was that Wang Ying had also learned how to split. Goodbye. The 10 Wang Ying clones moved in unison. There was almost no time for Sun Yinger to react. Bang 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 bang, without the slightest bit of mercy, he crushed the heads of the 10 Sun Yinger clones like they were watermelons. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swallowed in astonishment. He felt that this might be the legendary scene of domestic violence. To grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's surprise, the 10 Sun Yinger clones didn't finish splitting. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal himself swiftly followed the 10 Wang Ying clones out of the dark inner world and returned to reality. How did Lord Wang Ying do it? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very curious. Of course I have to use some special methods to deal with a woman who plays with fire. Wang Ying's lips curled up slightly. I copied her Shadow Dao ability so I naturally learned to split. As for the ability to stop splitting, it was that girl Anwan who gave it to me. Did Spiritual Master Anwan make a move again? She's just a meddlesome girl. She just can't sit still in her stomach every day. Wang Ying clones laughed. I've already sent people to the other battlefields, and they can effectively stop Sun Yinger from splitting. Except for one place. What place? A place where you can win without appearing. Chapter 1335. The Unspeakable Land. The monk was still in sightseeing mode, as expected of Dao ancestor Wang, to actually be able to maintain such a complicated core world for so long. The monk chattered on about his observations. It seems that the Dao ancestor has used the laws to build a complete ecosystem so that the laws can support each other so that the core world can be moved out of the body without collapsing. He was intoxicated by this magical world of the unspeakable land. He turned his head and was about to ask Wang Ling for his opinion. In the end, when he turned his head, he saw that Wang Ling's right eye had actually started to bleed. The blood was flowing out of the eye in a terrifying manner, as if it was free blood in a horror movie. Why was he suddenly injured? The monk was instantly taken aback. Ling Jinren knew, but the monk had keen eyesight and very quickly reacted. No, you're not Ling Jinren, as expected of Senior Golden Lamp. Someone who can withstand 10 of Master's palms is indeed amazing. Of course. This humble monk is also the only person who has survived 10 of Ling Jinren's palms. The monk was extremely proud. Looking at the person in front of him who was temporarily borrowing Wang Ling's body to speak, he narrowed his eyes. Are you Ling Jinren's real clone? Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch laughed bitterly and couldn't help slumping to the ground. That's right, if his lordship doesn't switch places with me, I really don't know what to do. This was the interaction between the real clone and the main body. At a critical moment, souls could switch places. It was just that this kind of soul switch was limited by distance. The distance between Earth and the unspeakable land was too long. It was almost an entire galaxy beyond the Milky Way. At such a long distance, even 10,086 gigabytes would be useless, let alone a 5G signal. Even if the monk used his real clone, he wouldn't be able to do it. Thus, the monk's reverence for Wang Ling rose by several levels. Ling Jinren. Forever a god. At the same time, the monk marveled in his heart at the power of the Lord of the Void at his peak. Even Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had been taught a lesson to this extent. If it wasn't for the fact that he was now more interested in the unspeakable land, even the monk himself wanted to compete with the Lord of the Void. But very quickly the monk thought of something very serious. That's not right, Dao Monarch. With Ling Jinren gone, what about destroying the unspeakable land? I'll leave it to you. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch said, I'm injured now. Obviously he can't fight. This penniless monk is going to destroy the unspeakable land alone? Without Wang Ling by his side, the monk started to question his own abilities. This was the external core world constructed by Dao ancestor Wang. With his current strength, even though he wouldn't be trapped here forever, it would still be a problem for him to destroy the entire unspeakable land. It's fine. Master left me a 100% enchantment spell. With that, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch reached out and tapped the monk on the forehead. Long. Suddenly, golden light shone everywhere. In an instant, Tyrant's entire body erupted with a dazzling radiance. This is Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. What are you waiting for? You've been strengthened. Go. This penniless monk will give it a try. Although he hadn't finished his sightseeing, Tyrant really wanted to try to see how much his palm strength had improved after being strengthened. What palm technique should I use? I'll use that newly learned ancient burning lamp Buddha palm of the past. Thus, Tyrant gathered his chi in his dantian and struck out with his palm in front of him. Wang Long Long. This was a tentative palm, and Tyrant deliberately didn't release its full power. But because it was in a strengthened state, the destructive power of this palm was beyond Tyrant's imagination. Tyrant had clearly only used less than 10% of his strength. As a result, this palm print filled up the entire unspeakable land. In an instant, the clouds rose and the light of Buddha soared into the sky. The ancient burning lamp Buddha palm of the past was like a blazing sun, erupting with terrifying power. It swept forward with the momentum of sweeping everything in its path. In one breath, the entire unspeakable land collapsed on the spot, and everything was destroyed. Starting from the shore, the monk's palm pushed forward to the core temple where Primordial Heavenly Tao was located. What on earth is going on? Primordial Heavenly Tao was extremely shocked. He had just changed into his armor and planned to head to the shore to fight the monk. In the end, before he could set off, the sky collapsed. It was already under attack. Boom. In an instant, the temple collapsed, and countless evil Heavenly Tao golden men were destroyed by the monk's palm. Ah! Primordial Heavenly Tao was hit head-on. The armor on his body instantly shattered. The enormous energy contained in the palm evaporated his body. It only took a few microseconds. Primordial Heavenly Tao's entire body had already been scalded into a sheet of shriveled golden skin, a tragic sight to behold. This palm had caused too much of a stir. It wasn't just Primordial Heavenly Tao and the evil Heavenly Tao golden men who hadn't reacted in time. Even Tyrant himself was shocked. Was this the kind of palm energy he could unleash at his realm? Tyrant found it hard to believe. Ling Jinren's enlightening spell was so powerful that it was beyond Tyrant's understanding. Master's enlightening spell resonates with your enlightening spell. So when it's used on you, it'll be 10 times more powerful than when it's used on other people. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch said, Also what? Everything that you've blessed before will have a huge boost in power for a short period of time. I see. Tyrant nodded. To catch bandits, first catch their leader. Although the unspeakable land hadn't been completely destroyed by his palm, instead, Primordial Heavenly Tao had been directly destroyed by a freak combination of factors. But what Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch found very strange was, it seemed that Primordial Heavenly Tao's soul was still there, and hadn't been completely destroyed. Dao Monarch, you might not know. My ancient Buddha palm of the past is also known as the repentance palm of the past. Anyone who is struck by this palm will have their soul trapped in a Buddhist illusion. Only by repenting can the soul be freed. Tyrant said, otherwise they'll forever be immersed in the reincarnation illusion of being killed. But I don't think they'll repent. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch smiled. So they'll never have a day of peace, Tyrant said with a Buddhist salute. Elsewhere, in the heart of Battle Sect, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch suddenly stood up under immense pressure. Sun Yinger was puzzled. But she was no longer interested in Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch kneeling. It's more important to take Rong Rong away as soon as possible. Sun Yinger frowned and turned her gaze to the sky. She had warned him before. This was already the last blow. The Gate of the Void had finished charging up its power. The huge Gate of the Void would turn into a cannon barrel at this moment and launch a devastating attack on Earth. No matter what had happened to Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, there was no turning back now. Easy. Just for a moment, a blazing beam of light fell from the sky. The World Devastator Void had arrived. But at that moment, another scene beyond Sun Yinger's expectations occurred. In Battle Sec's True Venerate Hall, a petite figure flapped the wings on her back and rushed toward the terrifying light of annihilation. A Divine World King? Sun Yinger would never have dreamed that the Divine World King would actually make a move at that moment to block her World Devastator Void Cannon. Why do you have to go this far for these Earthlings? Sun Yinger couldn't understand. In her eyes, a Divine World King who hadn't fully developed yet. In the face of the tremendous power of the World Devastator Void Cannon, however, he was just cannon fodder. In the sky, the Divine World's feathers of light fluttered down like an angel descending to Earth, emitting a holy light. Miss Awan resisted the pressure and flew higher and higher. Under the immense pressure, the Deity World King started to bleed. Fluttering snowflakes splattered and fell on the magic artifact in her hand. It wasn't until that moment that Sun Yinger realized that the Divine World King seemed to be holding something in her hand. She rubbed her eyes. She was sure that she wasn't seeing things. It was actually a phone stained with Miss Awan's World King blood. At that moment, Miss Awan was flying toward the terrifying world-destroying light. When the yin and yang are in chaos, I will dye the blue sky with my membrane blood. She screamed in a childish voice, raised the phone high, and flapped her wings to show off her elegant demeanor as a Divine World King. She actually used her own phone as a membrane. It pushed back the light of world annihilation. Chapter 1336. This shocking scene caused everyone in the battle sect to be dumbstruck and speechless. Ajwa's mouth dropped open in shock. Who could have imagined it? So this was what dye the blue sky with my film's blood actually meant. There was no doubt that Miss Awan had done a meritorious deed. She had used the phone film which had been blessed by the monk and which had been greatly strengthened in the short term by the enchantment spell to successfully withstand the world-destroying bombardment from the void. This is impossible. Sun Yinger shrieked. She clutched her head, looking very much like the groundhog from before when she collapsed. Sun Yinger couldn't accept it. How could his plan to take Lotus Sun away be stopped by a mere cell phone screen? It's you? At that moment, Sun Yinger looked down at the man on the ground who had stood up again. She was 100% sure that this had something to do with this true clone in front of her. Just a mere clone. I'll destroy you now. Sun Yinger flew into a rage out of humiliation and swooped down from the void. Her long white hair was completely spread out, and she looked like a demoness who had fallen from the sky. A ghostly figure with unimaginable agility flashed to a very close distance with Wang Ling in the blink of an eye. Wang Ling raised his hand and flicked Sun Yinger's skull with his thumb and middle finger. Sun Yinger's eyes were dazzled by the tremendous force. Crack! Her skull shattered on the spot and Sun Yinger screamed. The astonishing catapulting force caused her entire body to shoot backwards like a cannonball that had risen from the ground. Fierce and tyrannical, it shook heaven and earth. Wang Ling had held back a little. He had just calculated Sun Yinger's position to ensure that her body would take off from Earth accurately and land next to Wang Ying, who was waiting for him in space. It was better to leave the matter of shadow to him. To tell the truth, if it wasn't for Wang Ying, that flick just now would have destroyed Sun Yinger in both body and soul. In Wang Ling's view, there had been no suspense from the start in this battle. Over at the unspeakable. It seemed that the monk was almost done packing up. It was also time to swap his soul back. Senior Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. At that moment, Lotus Sun's familiar voice rang out behind Wang Ling. After experiencing a battle, the girl's white jade-like face was covered with some dust from the aftermath of the battle. She ran over awkwardly and walked in front of him openly. She smiled like a happy child. I knew you would stand up. Your classmate Wang Ling's clone. He had already returned to his physical body, but he didn't lose his memories. Was it because his obsession was too strong that it caused delayed amnesia? Wang Ling's lips moved slightly. He did not know what to say. He knew that the girl had once said that she would try her best not to forget. Who would have thought that he would actually succeed? Delayed amnesia was an extremely rare occurrence. Those with delayed amnesia would gradually lose their memories in the soul state after a few hours. At that moment, Wang Ling suddenly came back to his senses. He smelled a sweet fragrance that assailed his nostrils. Only then did he realize that he was very close to the young girl. He subconsciously wanted to retreat. But at this moment, Lotus Sun suddenly stretched out her hand. "Senior, don't move." The girl used her slender and long fingers to gently stroke his cheek and pinched off a petal that had pierced into his cheek. They had been left behind when Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch and Sun Yinger had fought earlier. The petal had pierced very deeply. The edges of the petal were slightly embedded. Seeing the wound, the girl felt a little apologetic. "My shadow actually caused so much trouble for Senior." Then she became even more daring. The girl began to gently touch the wound on his cheek with her fingertips. Bright blue spirit energy lit up at her fingertips and gently poured into the wound. Lotus Sun tried to use Mysterious Sea's recovery ability to heal the wound. At that moment, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch seemed to suddenly come back to his senses. He gently grabbed Lotus Sun's hand and gently moved it away. His smile was still as warm as a spring breeze. "Thank you for your kindness, Miss Sunday." "I'm fine." "Hey Senior, are you really okay?" Lotus Sun asked concernedly. "I'm fine." Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch smiled. "Miss Sun, you won." "I won?" "You won." Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch nodded. "Do you still remember the face-shaping competition?" Recalling the abnormal reaction on Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's body earlier, Lotus Sun instantly understood. "So, what I just pinched was..." The girl shyly crouched down on the spot and buried her face in her knees. She was so shy that she wanted to find a hole to crawl into. The unspeakable. Wang Ling's soul returned to his body. "Ling Jinren? Ling Jinren?" Seeing that his right abdomen was no longer bleeding, the monk confirmed that the real Wang Ling had returned. But he called out several times in a row. The youngster seemed to freeze on the spot and didn't move for a long time. Ling Jinren was actually in a daze? What a rare sight, the monk marveled in his heart. She had been too close just now. Wang Ling could even clearly feel the girl's breath. He reached out and gently touched his cheek. It was clear that he had switched bodies. On his cheek where he had been touched. The temperature there. It still didn't seem to have dispersed. At the same time, Sun Yinger, who had been bounced back to Wang Ying's side, immediately received another round of training. "I told you, woman, you're playing with fire." Wang Ying pinched Sun Yinger's chin and sneered. "What do you want to do?" The expression on Sun Yinger's face gradually turned into one of panic. Wang Ling's flick had sent her flying very far away. In the process of flying, Sun Yinger thoroughly understood the difference in absolute strength. She had thought that everything was going according to her plan. She hadn't expected the world-destroying attack she had painstakingly prepared to use. It wasn't even as strong as that reinforced phone film. At that very moment, she was even more aware of it. Wang Ying's madness. Who knew how a taciturn youngster like him, how could he give birth to such a crazy shadow? Wang Ying pinched her chin, a fierce expression on her face. To be honest, the more afraid Sun Yinger was, the more excited Wang Ying felt. "Can't you split up?" "I can split up as many as you can. No matter where you run, I can catch you and bring you back." Wang Ying gripped the white-haired girl's wrist firmly. The laughter that seemed to come from the bottom of his heart terrified Sun Yinger from the bottom of her heart. This was what it meant to hide a dagger behind a smile. Sun Yinger had thought that her level was already very high. Who would have thought that when she saw Wang Ying now, she realized that she paled in comparison. "What? My Shadow Dao ability doesn't work in front of you," Sun Yinger yelled. Not only that, Sun Yinger also realized that her split body's memories couldn't be shared. The information couldn't be transmitted to the main body in time. This was also one of the reasons why Sun Yinger lost this battle. Of course, Wang Ying couldn't tell her that Wang Nuan had given him permission. "You're female, I'm male." When a female meets a male, it naturally doesn't work. This is called, everything has its vanquisher. He couldn't help but smile. "Don't go overboard." Sun Yinger struggled with all her might, trying to break free from Wang Ying. "There's something even more overboard." Wang Ying stared at Sun Yinger and smirked. What are you doing, you pervert?" Sun Yinger was about to cry. What's wrong with a man being a pervert? Then Wang Ying reached out with another hand, grabbed the girl's other wrist and suddenly raised it above his head. His gaze wandered around and he chose the closest planet. He pressed down on the girl and smashed her forward. What kind of spell is this? Ha woman! You've never seen it before, right? Wang Ying sneered. This is the legendary planet wall-knocking spell. He held onto her wrist tightly and slammed her into an orange planet. The two of them fell like divine stars descending from the sky, directly blasting through the planet's core. No, this planet is too brittle, change to another one. Wang Ying wasn't done playing and he grabbed Sun Yinger's wrist and smashed it towards the second planet. At this moment, Sun Yinger's tears had already burst out. You, let go of me. Chapter 1337. Wang Ying gripped Sun Yinger's wrist tightly and began to wreak havoc in the depths to the west of the Milky Way. No less than 100 planets were destroyed. Sun Yinger felt like a three-dimensional pinball that kept bouncing up and down, and she was in a terrible state. Don't do this to me, after who knew how long. Sun Yinger felt like her tears were about to run dry. Only then did Wang Ying restrain himself a little. It wasn't until then that Sun Yinger realized how perverted Wang Ying was. It turned out that the harder she cried, the more excited Wang Ying became. Thus, when Sun Yinger realized this, she simply shut up and didn't dare to make another sound. Not crying anymore? Keep crying. Wang Ying sneered. He didn't let go of Sun Yinger, not because he was afraid that she would run away, but because she was too fun and he couldn't bear to let her go. I won't cry anymore, really? Sun Yinger pretended to hold it in. She knew that in the face of a pervert like Wang Jin, the best way was to pretend to compromise first, and then look for an opportunity to escape. But Wang Ying's perversion was beyond Sun Yinger's imagination. Wang Ying looked at her coldly. Take off your clothes. Sun Yinger panicked again. What are you doing? I'm afraid you'll run away. But as long as you're naked you should behave. Don't worry, I'm a gentleman. I promise I won't look at you. Pervert, fine. Wang Ying shrugged. In fact, he had already expected this answer. Then let's continue. You? Sun Yinger knew that she had been tricked again. But before she could say anything, Wang Ying launched his planetary wall-thumping spell again. That day, deep in the western part of the Milky Way, Sun Yinger's screams rose and fell. The spirits of the nearby planets that had not been harmed were all trembling in fear. For a very long time to come. No planetary spirit was willing to mention it again. And Wang Ying, through her own hard work, developed a new term. It was called Ball Quake. The unspeakable. After Tyrant's palm landed, the space began to show signs of cracking along with the destruction of the core shrine. The primordial heavenly Tao was trapped in the samsara of death, and the unspeakable land had already fallen into a state of collapse. Even if Wang Ling didn't do anything, in a few days this place would naturally collapse. I didn't expect that this world created by Tao ancestor Wang would end up being. Tyrant's emotions were complicated. Of course it was mainly because Ling Jinren was strong. The power of the 100% enchantment technique increased the power of his palm strike to the point where it could destroy the world. This was something monk Jin Deng didn't expect. The destruction of the unspeakable land meant that the girl's soul would no longer be affected. On the other hand, Sun Yinger was suppressed by Wang Ying. With the Lord of the Void being controlled, she naturally couldn't return to the Void. Sun Yinger was like the host of this Void return ceremony. Now that the host had been dragged away to receive training, the ceremony naturally could not continue. Of course for Wang Ling. He felt that things were not completely over yet. This fortune teller. He still hadn't found it. This was the mastermind behind all of this. Tao Master, look. At that moment, Tyrant's eyes suddenly pointed somewhere up ahead. This was the core shrine of the unspeakable land. The place where it had been annihilated. The space there had been completely shattered. The entire core shrine had been destroyed and turned into dust particles swirling in the universe. But in the center of that annihilation, there was a glowing object that shone like a luminous pearl in the dark. Wang Ling stretched out his hand and drew this glowing object into his palm. It was a six-sided Rubik's cube the size of a palm. It had an extremely high temperature. It exuded strong and dense spirit power. This wasn't an ordinary object. If an ordinary cultivator had held it in his hand, his whole hand would have been blown up by the Rubik's spirit power. It should be a stabilizing magic artifact that moves the core world to the outside world. Although Tyrant didn't know the origin of the Rubik's Cube, he made a judgment based on his own experience. They had finally found the secret to why Tao ancestor Wang had been able to move the core world to the outside world. In addition to Tao ancestor Wang's own understanding of the power of nomological laws, this stabilizing magic artifact had also played a crucial role. Wang Ling gripped the Rubik's Cube in his palm and exerted a little force. In the end, he found that this Rubik's Cube had actually generated a tremendous force of its own to fight against him. This kind of spirit power was astonishing, and Wang Ling had rarely seen it on other magic artifacts. Even Jinka didn't have such tremendous spirit power. If it was Jingbai after the fusion, it could be compared to him. Could it be that this Rubik's Cube Jinka and Bai Qiao came from the same hometown? Wang Ling gripped the Rubik's Cube thoughtfully. This was an important discovery. He carefully put the Rubik's Cube away in the king's eye space. Before leaving, Wang Ling suddenly thought of something. He took one last look at the crumbling, unspeakable land. What are you looking at, Ling Jinren? Monk was curious. The crack, Wang Ling answered succinctly. That was right, he was observing the crack in the outer layer of the unspeakable land. This was because the evil golden men that had escaped to Earth had come out from this crack. Wang Ling wanted to see what had caused the crack. Had the evil gold men torn it open themselves, or had someone else done it deliberately? In the end, Wang Ling was stunned on the spot. Who caused the crack? Monk asked. Wang Ling was silent and didn't directly answer the monk's question. In the end, he only replied with one word, accident. Monk? ? A few seconds later, Wang Ling and the monk returned to Earth without a hitch. But they didn't go in directly and instead stayed in space outside Earth. The monk saw Wang Ling raise his hand as if preparing to attack Earth. Ling Jinren, you are a 5% targeted global amnesia spell, Wang Ling replied. Sun Yinger had made too much of a fuss. Except for the core members of Battle Sect, everyone else's memories had to be erased, so that Lotus Sun wouldn't be in trouble. Sun Yinger and Lotus Sun were exactly the same. The plot to return to the void hadn't succeeded in the end. But the whole thing had already started to ferment on Earth. Out of helplessness, Wang Ling could only resort to this. In any case, Earth had already completed its upgrade. He had only used 5% of his strength to slap the ocean. Apart from the pain, it wouldn't have any negative impact on Earth. The spirit of Earth was terrified. Seeing Wang Ling raise his hand, he hurriedly screamed, Jinren, calm down. Quickly withdraw your strength. I can cast a spell to help Jinren make everyone in the world lose their memories. Why didn't you say so earlier? Wang Ling rolled his eyes at the spirit of Earth. His palm was already on its way. It was obviously difficult to withdraw his strength. Thus, he could only say apologetically to the spirit of Earth, next time for sure. The spirit of Earth, 2 seconds later. The spirit of Earth screamed like a pig being slaughtered and resounded throughout the Milky Way. Chapter 1338. A battle about the soul and the body eventually came to an end with the directional amnesia of all the cultivators on Earth. After confirming that Lotus Sun had returned to her body and could move normally again, Old Man Sun from Huagua Water Curtain Group was thrilled. All the hospital staff and the group's employees cheered. In front of Battle Sect, Old Man Sun arranged for someone to bring Lotus Sun back and shook hands with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sincerely. Thank you, Senior Immortal, for your help. But the old man was still a little worried and wanted her to go back to the hospital for a more detailed examination. It's just a piece of cake. Everyone worked together. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Don't worry, Senior Immortal. My Huagua Water Curtain Group will cover all of Battle Sect's losses, including the damaged buildings. The old man smiled very happily. Ah, you're welcome. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled even more happily. Although Old Man Sun didn't remember exactly what had happened, he had heard that an evil person had wreaked havoc in Battle Sect in order to steal his granddaughter's body. With the help of all the members of Battle Sect, his granddaughter's body had recovered, and even the evil person had been killed on the spot. Now that the evil person had been killed, Sunny Yuan naturally didn't care anymore. For Old Man Sunday, nothing was more important than his granddaughter's health. Half an hour later in the True Venerate Hall, faced with her crimes of destroying Earth on purpose and disrupting the unity of the cultivators, Sun Yinger confessed without any reservation. Sun Yinger was in fact the evil person who had already been killed according to the rumors. I was wrong, I was really wrong. I shouldn't have come to Earth in the first place. If I hadn't. The white-haired girl knelt devoutly in the True Venerate Hall and sincerely repented. Wang Ying stood next to her, arms crossed as she stared at her. At that moment, some time had passed since the planetary wall-thumping spell. But Sun Yinger still had lingering fears. She lowered her eyes and stared at the claw marks on her wrists out of the corner of her eye. They had been left behind when Wang Ying had pinched her. Furthermore, it was as if she had deliberately left her mark as a declaration of sovereignty. I know what you're thinking. Wang Ying stared at Sun Yinger. You're the master of the void. It's not difficult for you to regrow your hand. How did you know? Sun Yinger was shocked, because she did have the thought of chopping off her hand. She was the new master of the void, Yet someone had left a mark on her. How was she going to rule the void and establish herself in the void world if word of this got out? In front of me, any little schemes are useless. Wang Ying smiled. I can tell you very clearly that the mark on your wrist will not disappear. This is a kind of brand that seems to be engraved in the soul. No matter where the person who is engraved by me escapes, I will be able to find him in an instant. You are too much. Sun Yinger raised her head and tears welled up in her eyes again. If it weren't for the fact that you're Miss Sun's shadow, you'd already be dead. Wang Ying shrugged. You only have one choice now, and that is to stay on Earth obediently. And accept my supervision. After all, you are indeed a dangerous person. Lotus Sun's plan to return to the void had come to an end. The main reason was that Sun Yinger was currently on Earth. As long as the master of the void was constantly monitored, she naturally wouldn't be in danger. As for who to monitor Sun Yinger, Wang Ling felt that there was really no one more suitable than Wang Ying. He would leave the matter of the shadow to it. There was nothing wrong with it. I object. In the Great Hall of True Venerate, Sun Yinger had already admitted her mistake. But she was still extremely dissatisfied with the fact that she would be monitored on Earth. How was this supervision? This was simply imprisonment. Objection overruled. At that moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also stood up and looked at the rest of the people in the Great Hall of True Venerate. Everyone, let's vote. Those who agree with Miss Sun Yinger's plan to monitor Earth, please raise your hands. Ajua Fangxing Monk Golden Lamp, Immortal Jinyuan Miss Awan, a brand new Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, Death Heavenly Dao wrapped in bandages. Almost all the core members were in the hall. As soon as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said this, everyone raised their hands in unison. The minority obeys the majority. The proposal passes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded in satisfaction. Just like that, the matter was settled. All of you, just you wait. When I return to the void, the first thing I'll do is wipe out Battle Sect. Sun Yinger rose from her kneeling position in anger and humiliation. Jim? At that moment, Wang Ying raised her eyebrows. The girl was going to continue to curse furiously and say something even more outrageous. In the end, Wang Ying forced her back with a look and she knelt back down. I accept. Sun Yinger wanted to cry but had no tears. Under Wang Ying's coercion, she could only agree to the conditions. Very good. At that point, Wang Ying nodded in satisfaction. While you're under my supervision on Earth, please do the following things. You first. Sun Yinger was like a bullied little wife. She really didn't have the slightest bit of temper when it came to Wang Ying. First, after you return to Miss Sun's body, you're not allowed to cause any trouble. During the day, you'll obediently be Miss Sun's shadow. And at night? Come to me at night to write a self-reflection and I'll check your homework. While you're on Earth, you'll have to write a self-reflection of no less than 800 words every day. You can write it on the same day. But you're not allowed to fill it with water. You need to express your true feelings. Second, Miss Sun hasn't returned to the void, so her true strength is still at the foundation establishment stage. As a shadow, you still have to protect Miss Sun at all times and treat her like your real mother. Duh, a real mother? Not a real mother, but better than a real mother. Wang Ying said resolutely and decisively, just like my Commander Lord. Although I've always called him Commander Lord, I know he's my real father. Sun Yinger realized that Wang Ying was really shameless. Given her temper, she would have retorted under normal circumstances. But now she didn't dare. Third, there's the problem of Miss Sun's memory. After her soul returned to her body, she experienced an extremely rare delayed amnesia. I reckon that it's about time. Miss Sun will soon forget everything that happened when she was in her soul state, Wang Ying said. But I know that she has records. Sun Yinger said. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Wang Ying looked at Sun Yinger and said, there are records on Miss Sun's cloud disk. To prevent any accidents, your mission when you go back is to erase all these records. I understand. Sun Yinger lowered her head and agreed. Very good. Wang Ying nodded. I'll tell you about the remaining few thousand records when I think of them. You can return to classmate Sun's body and continue to be a shadow. With that, Wang Ying waved her hand and watched as Sun Yinger left as if she was fleeing. On the way back to Lotus Sun's body, Sun Yinger's hatred for Wang Ying grew even stronger. Bam. She actually wanted to instruct her to erase the memories in those cloud disks? Don't even think about it. She wouldn't delete them. As she flew, Sun Yinger suddenly turned around and stuck out her tongue in the direction of Battle Sect. Even if I can't beat you, I'll piss you off to death. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chapter 1339. After Sun Yinger went back, 2 small meetings were held at the same time. In the inner office of the True Sovereign Hall. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal called him into his office alone. They discussed the aftermath of the incident. Has Brother Zhuo made arrangements for Jiang Xiaoche and Yi Jiang? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Don't worry, Senior Immortal. Their real bodies and dummies have already been swapped back, so there's nothing wrong, Audiobook replied. But Audiobook had a feeling. He felt that this might not be the real reason why Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was looking for him. As expected, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swiftly took out a gift box. It seemed to have been prepared a long time ago and had been placed in a drawer in his office. Mr. Sun has already promised to compensate all of our battle sex losses, as well as to assist in the construction of the highest realms pill laboratory and spirit beast domestication base. Although young Miss Sun is fine as the leader of a sect, I have to express my sincerity. She's been frightened recently, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. What do you mean? This is just a small token of my appreciation. I'll have to trouble Brother Zhuo to help me deliver it. Aren't you going to see Miss Sun? How would Senior Immortal know? Audiobook smiled. It's not the first time I've known you, Brother Zhuo. In the office, after the 2 men looked at each other, they laughed tacitly. The second meeting place was the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. After drawing countless death substitute talismans, the Heavenly Tao of Survival returned to the Heavenly Court with its injured brother, the Heavenly Tao of Death. The Golden Men of the Heavenly Path, led by the other 5 main positions of the Heavenly Path, welcomed them. For a moment, the Heavenly Court was bustling with noise and excitement. Thank you for your hard work in the lower realm, Strength Heavenly Tao said with tears in his eyes. I've finally completed Ling Jinren's task. Death Heavenly Tao's expression was a little complicated. I heard that you took the initiative to refuse Ling Jinren's treatment? Yeah. Death Heavenly Tao nodded. I don't dare trouble Ling Jinren to treat me. Miss Lotus Sun was dragged out of my inner world by Sun Yinger, and it was my fault for not protecting her properly. I'm already very grateful that Ling Jinren didn't punish me for failing to protect me. How could I dare trouble him to treat me again? I understand. The other main seats of Heavenly Tao nodded. As the saying went, there was no reward without pains. This was a situation like the Heavenly Tao of Death. The Heavenly Tao's law of equivalent exchange was very strict. Death Heavenly Tao would probably have to pay a certain price for asking Wang Ling to treat him when he couldn't protect him, so it was better not to treat him. As for the hard work, that required physical strength, it was not a condition of equivalent exchange. Manual labor was the least valuable. However, for Death Heavenly Tao, this trip to the lower realm wasn't without rewards. His intervention could also be considered a success, which meant that the Heavenly Court had further deepened its relationship with Wang Ling. The future path of the Heavenly Court had undoubtedly become narrower. Brother Death, there is actually one more thing that I need to trouble you with. At that moment, Strength Heavenly Law suddenly spoke. What is it? Death Heavenly Tao had a bad feeling when he saw how polite the other envoys of the main Heavenly Tao were. It's not a big deal. It's just a small token of our appreciation. Strength Heavenly Tao said, we've thought about it carefully. If it hadn't been for what happened to Miss Sun this time, our Heavenly Court might have had to wait for hundreds or even thousands of years before we found a great opportunity to deepen the distance between us and Ling Jinren. This is truly a heaven-sent opportunity. So, we've prepared some gifts to express our appreciation. We hope that Brother Death can deliver them to Miss Sun on our behalf. Gifts? Death Heavenly Tao was startled. The Heavenly Court had personally prepared gifts for a girl from the lower realm? This was indeed rare. Miss Sun has suffered a lot in this incident. Consider this a small token of our appreciation for her. Strength Heavenly Tao pushed the prepared gift box into Death Heavenly Tao's hand. It's not difficult for you to give her a gift, but in whose name? You can't possibly give it in the name of our Heavenly Tao, right? Death Heavenly Tao nodded, then said, Miss Sun is about to lose her memory and may not remember us. Brother Death, don't worry too much. Just give it in the name of a battle sect disciple. Battle sect disciple? Death Heavenly Tao laughed again. When did our Heavenly Tao become a member of Battle Sect? F***K, isn't it good to become a member of Battle Sect? Brother Death, you're clearly already a core member of Battle Sect. Strength Heavenly Tao said excitedly, Ling Jinren's 5% directional global amnesia spell didn't include you. The fact that you haven't lost your memory means that Ling Jinren has completely approved of you. This is a clear indication. I understand. Death Heavenly Tao nodded. From now on, Brother Death, you can represent our heavenly court and have more contact with Ling Jinren. This is also the result of our meeting just now. But during this meeting, my brother and I, the survival Heavenly Tao, aren't here. According to the principle of majority rule, whether you two brothers were present or not, the result would be the same. Since you want to have contact with Ling Jinren, you have to establish your identity on Earth. What do you mean? Death Heavenly Tao asked. Number 60 high. Let's go study together. I'm a Heavenly Tao, why do I need to study? Death Heavenly Tao retorted sternly. The monk is so strong and he's now studying functions. Why shouldn't the Heavenly Tao study? Strength Heavenly Tao retorted sternly. It was reasonable and convincing. Death Heavenly Tao was rooted to the spot on the spot. Elsewhere, Shanghai First Military Medical Hospital. Lotus Sun underwent a comprehensive physical examination again. The results were very good, and the doctor congratulated Old Man Sunday. Congratulations, Mr. Sun. Miss Sun is perfectly fine. And I feel that her body seems to be even better than last year's physical examination data. I understand, thank you for your hard work, doctor. Old Man Sun cupped his fists respectfully in salute to the doctor. Then I won't disturb you any further, Mr. Sunday. There are other patients waiting for me. With a smile on his face, the doctor quickly gave the grandfather and grandson some space. Giving a doctor a red packet was an insult to doctors. It was a doctor's duty to save the dying and help the injured. So many doctors had been mobilized for Lotus Sun's matter this time, and Old Man Sun felt a little apologetic. Thus, Sunny Yuan made a shocking decision. He decided to thank all the hospitals that had lent a helping hand this time. Whether they were in or out of the city, as long as they had sent doctors, each hospital would receive at least 2 buildings from Huagua Water Curtain Group as well as supporting medical facilities. Grandpa. At that moment, Lotus Sun looked at Sunny Yuan, who was smiling from the bed. Don't worry, Rong Rong. To be on the safe side, I'll observe her for one more night. You can go home tomorrow. Old Man Sun held the girl's hand tightly and felt her vibrant pulse. There was no doubt that Lotus Sun had completely recovered. But for some reason, he felt that his precious granddaughter didn't seem very happy. Rong Rong seems to have something on her mind? I don't know either, Lotus Sun lowered her head. I feel like I'm forgetting something. You've suffered so much this time. You must be frightened. The doctor said that this is intermittent amnesia. Once you relax, you'll be fine. Old Man Sun smiled. He then took out his storage bag and placed several gift boxes in front of the girl. What are these? Lotus Sun asked. Battle Sect put in a lot of effort to save you this time. Look, so many people care about you. These are all gifts from them. Grandpa picked out a few of the most important ones and the rest are at home. You can slowly open them when you get home, Sunny Yuan said. These 3 gift boxes had in fact come from Audiobook, grenade-throwing senior immortal and Heavenly Tao who had pretended to be a disciple of Battle Sect. What's in the box? The girl's curiosity was piqued. She opened the 3 gift boxes one by one. Then, grandfather and grandson stared at the items in the gift boxes in silence for a long time. They understood this principle. But why were they all a USB drive? In the small theater, Audiobook. By the way, what did Senior Immortal give to junior sister Lotus Sun? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This is a priceless treasure. It's a small thing but it contains a huge amount of energy. Audiobook scared and smiled bitterly. It's so good to be rich, unlike me. I'm so poor that I can only give a USB drive. The corners of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched. Brother Zhua, did you also give a USB drive? Zhua, what do you mean, also? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal dropped his forehead into his hand. I reckon that Miss Lotus Sun's house can now open a USB drive store. Zhua, that can't be, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Do you think it's just the 2 of us? Zhua. Chapter 1340. Maybe it was some kind of secret technique? This was Old Man Sun's first reaction when he saw the USB drive. After all, it was a gift from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the head of Battle Sect. He couldn't be that stingy. Sunny Yuan quickly ordered someone to bring a laptop to Lotus Sunday. Rong Rong, take a look. Maybe there's something important inside. Grandpa, please excuse us for a moment. Old Man Sun stood up with a smile on his face. Everyone had their own privacy which needed to be respected. The old man was a sensible man. On the other hand, he was well aware of the kind of people in Battle Sect. What was stored in the USB drive definitely wasn't some random thing. He only needed to know this and that was enough. Grandpa, you don't want to see it? The girl wanted to share it. This is something your friend left for you. Grandpa doesn't think it's appropriate. Old man's son shook his head. If you need anything, just press the call button next to the bed. Grandpa will be with you next door. He had turned down all his work in the group and planned to spend time with his precious granddaughter in peace for a while. Thank you, Grandpa. Lotus Sun's eyes curved. Then, full of curiosity, she plugged the USB drive into her laptop and plugged in her headphones. The first thing she looked at was the USB drive that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had given her. It was a video that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had recorded himself. It was a video that he had recorded in his office. In the video, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was still wearing his familiar white slim-fitting Taoist robe. His long black hair hung down naturally and he stood ramrod straight. Miss Sun, when you see this video you may wonder why I, the head of Battle Sect, would record such a video for you. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said slowly, the first thing I want to tell you is that you've already lost a part of your memory. The entire video was about 15 minutes long. After the girl finished watching it carefully, although her memory hadn't completely recovered, she seemed to have a general understanding of the whole story. Furthermore, she heard a familiar name in grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's introduction. Wang Ling, classmate Wang Ling is actually so amazing. The girl's expression was the same as the astonishment she had felt when she first heard it. She hadn't expected it either. Everything had actually happened because of her. And Wang Ling had done so many things for her in silence. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had narrated the entire incident from his own point of view, so there were naturally some omissions, but the advantage of it was that it was logical and organized. As the leader of the Battle Sect, there was no need for him to fabricate such a story and give it to him as a gift. Of course, if this was just grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's opinion, the girl might still have her doubts. But now she had 3 USB drives in her hands. The second USB drive was sent by the Heavenly Tao disguised as the disciples of the Battle Sect. In the video, Strength Heavenly Tao was sitting in front of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee's desk with a serious expression. Hello, Miss Sunday. I'm Strength Heavenly Tao. When you see this video you might have already lost a part of your memory. The video left behind by Tiandao made the girl feel even more horrified. The heavenly law of the lower realm, she had never heard of such a thing. And most importantly, this actually had something to do with Wang Ling, so the Heavenly Tao was opened by classmate Wang Ling. Lotus Sun felt that there was a lot of information to take in. But after watching the second video left behind by the Heavenly Tao, she had a clearer understanding of the entire incident. The Heavenly Tao narrated from a different angle, and added a lot of details to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's narrative. Because all the Heavenly Tao's memories were shared, when Death Heavenly Tao had been by the girl's side, Death Heavenly Tao's memories had also flowed into the minds of the other Heavenly Tao. So Strength Heavenly Tao's narrative was in fact everything that Death Heavenly Tao had seen when it had been with the girl. Now there was only one USB drive left. It had been sent by Senior Audiobook. She wondered what details he would add to her story. Filled with curiosity, Lotus Sun replaced the USB drive. Inside it was another video. Audiobook had recorded it for her while standing. But after pressing the play button, Lotus Sun felt as if she had been hit hard. Hello, Mistress. When you see this video you might have already lost a part of your memory. From grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Heavenly Tao's narration, she already knew that Audiobook's Shifu was in fact Wang Ling. Then didn't Mistress mean? The girl's face instantly turned red. Lotus Sun felt a little stupefied. Unable to continue listening, she closed the laptop with a bang. It wasn't for any other reason. It was because Audiobook's narration had been a little wretched, and he had chuckled the whole time, which was completely different from the serious Senior Audiobook she usually knew. Senior Audiobook actually had this side to him. The girl found it inconceivable. When she came back to her senses, Lotus Sun realized that the laptop screen had actually cracked because she had turned it off too hard. The noise directly alarmed Old Man Sun, who was next door. He instinctively thought that his granddaughter had fallen out of bed, and hurried over to check on her. Rong, are you okay? Old Man Sun opened the door and came in, his face full of worry. It wasn't until he saw that Lotus Sun was sitting on the bed, safe and sound, that he breathed a sigh of relief. I'm fine, Grandpa. I just turned off the computer too hard just now, said the girl. It's fine, it's just a computer. I'll just switch to another one. Old man Sun looked at Lotus Sun and somehow felt that something wasn't right. Rong, why's your face so red? Red. Lotus Sun was instantly nervous. Recalling how Ajwa had called her master's wife just now, she couldn't stop her heart from beating faster. The heart rate monitor on the side showed that Lotus Sun's heart rate and blood pressure were rising rapidly. The entire machine was even sounding an alarm. Old man Sun was instantly very anxious. At the same time he was very puzzled. Everything had been fine just now, why had the data suddenly become abnormal? 5 or 6 minutes later, after the doctor on duty had examined Lotus Sun, he invited Sunny Yuan out of the ward. Old man Sun was nervous, but he still put on a prepared expression. Doctor, tell me what's wrong with my granddaughter. I'm already prepared. No, don't worry, Mr. Sunday. As I said before, Miss Sun is very healthy, there's nothing wrong with her. The doctor shook his head. But her heart rate is unusually fast. Excuse me, does Miss Sun like anyone? The doctor asked bluntly. There have always been many people pursuing Rong, but I've never seen her truly fall for anyone. The old man shook his head. Is that so? The doctor smiled meaningfully. Old man Sun wasn't stupid. There was no way he wouldn't have guessed what the doctor was hinting at. Doctor, you mean, Miss Sun, she's in love? In love? Old man Sun was surprised. Which family is this kid from? How much does he like her? The faster her heart beats, the more she likes her. The doctor's words were concise. But as for who she likes, Mr. Sun, you'll have to ask yourself. I understand, thank you, doctor. Old man Sun nodded. That night was destined to be a sleepless one for Old Man Sunday. He had never thought that his precious granddaughter would actually be so moved by someone. Of course, this someone, Old Man Sun had guessed it based on his intuition. Considering the girl's feelings, he didn't directly ask her who on earth she liked. But to Old Man Sun, the answer was already very obvious. He had spent so much effort to save his granddaughter and had even sent her a gift. Inside that USB drive was probably some kind of confession video or something. It made sense. Everything made sense. In the middle of the night, Old Man Sun paced back and forth in front of the bed in the room next to Lotus Sun's as he racked his brains for words. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, December 2nd. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal received a message from Old Man Sunday Sunny Yuan. Senior Immortal, I'm really sorry to disturb you so late at night. I'm very grateful for Battlesec's help to my Sun family, but my granddaughter is only 16, so I will never agree to this marriage between Senior Immortal and Rong. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? Chapter 1341. When Old Man Sun realized that the person Lotus Sun liked was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, for the first time he had the urge to smash his head against a block of tofu. Although it was said that love could transcend age, however, the span was too big and it was easy to sprain his waist. 16 years old was like a flower. How could Rong have taken a fancy to this Battlesec sect master? He felt that young people were too impulsive. At this time, it was necessary for the old man in the family to come out and act as a cooling agent to calm down the head in love. Of course, there was another very important reason why the old man was vehemently opposed to this marriage, and that was because someone had asked him to be grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's matchmaker. What should he do now? Old Man Sun didn't know what to do. The Battle Sect and Huagua Water Curtain Group were currently partners. Even if he couldn't become her grandson-in-law, he would still be her friend. At the very least, he had to pay more attention to his wording. He could no longer throw the money in the other person's face like he usually did, and then ask, "How much money do you want for you to leave my baby granddaughter?" Sunny Yuan felt that he couldn't imagine grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's image, and that it was out of place. The most important thing was, this matter was of great importance. It even concerned his precious granddaughter's reputation. He could not let anyone else know about this. He had no choice but to come forward and negotiate in private. While he was frowning, Old Man Sun's phone rang. It was a call from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal received Old Man Sun's message, for the first time, he had the urge to smash his head against the broccoli. Wasn't the USB for Miss Sun to complete her memory? Why did it suddenly turn into an objection to his marriage with Miss Sun? For a moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shivered. I almost couldn't even hold my phone, not to mention that Old Man Sun was against this marriage. Even if they carried 80 palanquins to invite him to be the son-in-law of the Sun family. He didn't have the guts. So here's the problem. How did this misunderstanding come about? After Old Man Sun's greeting, grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't sleep anymore. He felt that before things got out of hand, he had to explain himself as soon as possible. After dialing Old Man Sun's cell phone, grenade-throwing senior immortal had an aggrieved expression on his face. As soon as the call was picked up, Old Man Sun immediately said, "Perfected Monarch. You finally called. Don't worry. You can slowly state your conditions. We can discuss it as long as you don't get together with Rongrong." Grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I actually don't want to be with Miss Sun. Could it be that you still want to have sex with me?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal took a deep breath. "Mr. Sun, calm down. I think there might be a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" "After my granddaughter received your war sex USB, her heartbeat accelerated. The doctor said that Rongrong is in love, so I think there must be some kind of confession video." "Mr. Sun didn't watch the video?" "I didn't. This is Rongrong's privacy." "But Miss Sun didn't just receive my flash drive?" "Mr. Sun, what makes you think that she likes me?" Hearing this, Sunny Yuan was stunned. Very quickly, Old Man Sun was startled. "Could it be? The one Rongrong likes is Audiobook. Grenade-throwing senior immortal?" Well, this was completely missing the point. Compared with grenade-throwing senior immortal, actually, Old Man Sun found Audiobook even more unacceptable. The main reason was that he didn't like his hairstyle very much. Every time Old Man Sun saw Audiobook's curly hair, he had the urge to cut it off with a pair of scissors. Helpless, grenade-throwing senior immortal could only remind him further. "Old Man Sun, do you remember that not long ago, Miss Sun actually confessed to you?" Old Man Sun was baffled. "Rongrong confessed to you? When did that happen?" As soon as he said this, grenade-throwing senior immortal sensed that something wasn't right. Back then, Lotus Sun's confession had caused a sensation on the internet. Although it had been quickly suppressed afterward, it was reasonable to say that given Old Man Sun's memory, it was impossible for him to completely forget it. Could it be that Brother Death Heavenly Dao's physical amnesia had been too strong, and the effect of the 5% targeted global amnesia spell had directly caused Old Man Sun to develop intermittent sequelae, which caused the amnesia to intensify, causing him to forget things that he shouldn't have forgotten? After thinking it over, grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that this was the most reasonable explanation. If Brother Ling didn't exist in Old Man Sun's current memories, if grenade-throwing senior immortal Sun had given the USB flash drive now, it would indeed arouse suspicion. Since Sunny Yuan already didn't remember Lotus Sun's confession, grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that if he brought it up again, he might complicate the whole matter even more. He took a deep breath and explained in full detail, "Mr. Sun, you misunderstand. I'm 100% sure that the person Miss Sun likes isn't me, nor is it anyone who gave me the present this time. The person Miss Sun likes is in number 60 high." Grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that this was as far as he could go. The best outcome for the rest of the matter was to wait for Old Man Sun to calm down and recall it. Then I'm really sorry, senior immortal, for bothering you so late at night." This time it was Old Man Sun who felt a little embarrassed. He believed what grenade-throwing senior immortal said. He was the Grand Sect leader of Battle Sect. In the face of such a personal matter, he wouldn't lie to him. After hanging up the phone, Old Man Sun rubbed his chin as he sank into deep thought. It turned out that Rongrong had confessed to someone before? This was a big deal. It was impossible for him not to remember. Sunny Yuan was calling Jiang Shaoche to ask about the situation. At that moment he suddenly heard a sweet female voice in his ear. "His name is Wang Ling, who is it?" Sunny Yuan stood up in alarm. But the room was empty and no one was there. Old Man Sun didn't notice. It was in his blind spot. A figure swiftly slipped out of the crack. At that moment Sun Yinger looked a little excited. It turned out that getting revenge on Wang Ying was such a delightful thing. She had wanted her to delete the information in the cloud disk because she didn't want Lotus Sun to know about Wang Ling. But she had done the exact opposite. After reminding Old Man Sun, Sun Yinger quickly went to Lotus Sun's room. She didn't show her figure but directly used the form of a shadow to whisper in the girl's ear, "Cloud, disk, little, Ben. But as soon as she finished speaking, an even more domineering shadow quietly appeared behind her. "Chem?" Sun Yinger stood on end at the familiar voice. "I didn't do it on purpose, really?" She tried to muddle through. And then there was no then. Sun Yinger's shadow was dragged out by Wang Ying. Chapter 1342. The moment Wang Ying dragged her out, Sun Yinger had already realized that things weren't looking good. In front of this man who was like a tyrant, she couldn't use any of her abilities at all. She was like a fish on the chopping board. No, perhaps she was even more pitiful than a fish. At least a fish could still struggle, but it seemed like she didn't even have the right to struggle. I knew you wouldn't behave. Wang Ying took Sun Yinger's hand and dragged her swiftly through the Earth's atmosphere to the moon. Moon Spirit's heart trembled. After Wang Ling had repaired him to 70 to 80% last time, Wang Ling had hurried off to do other things. Moon Spirit could only heal the rest of the damage on his own. Seeing Wang Ying bring Sun Yinger to the moon, Moon Spirit suddenly felt a wave of despair. He was afraid that Wang Ying was going to use his infamous planet-battering spell again. All the planet spirits to the west of the Milky Way wailed at Wang Ying's tyrannical move. However, they had no way of complaining at all, nor could they do so. After landing on the moon, Wang Ying felt the ground under his feet tremble slightly, and immediately knew what Moon Spirit was thinking. He smiled. Moon Spirit, don't worry. I'm just borrowing a place today, I won't hurt you. Hearing this, Moon Spirit heaved a sigh of relief. Can you not be so rough every time? Sun Yinger looked as if she had been stabbed by Wang Ying. In fact, Wang Ying's strength couldn't really hurt Sun Yinger at all. In any case, she was the Lord of the Void. How could her body be so fragile? I've told you to be more honest. You didn't listen, so I had to treat you this way. Wang Ying scratched Sun Yinger's claw marks with his thumb. If you don't learn from your mistakes, you'll suffer in the end. Have you forgotten the mark I left on your body? As long as I want to, I can track you anytime and anywhere. Don't be so sure. Anyway, it's all over now. Rongrong already knows everything. So what if he knows? Wang Ying shrugged indifferently. In any case, Lord Ling is just a block of wood. He can't develop feelings for anyone else. Sun Yinger found this inconceivable. You already know, but very quickly Sun Yinger understood. Wang Ying did it on purpose. He had already predicted that she would not follow his orders. That was why he had set this trap, waiting for her to fall into it. He was waiting for her to make a mistake so that he could punish her. So perverted. Thinking of this, Sun Yinger could not help but shiver, and goosebumps appeared all over her body. You finally realized? At this moment, Wang Ying suddenly took a step forward and pressed Sun Yinger onto the ground of the moon. He grabbed the girl's wrist and raised it above her head. Their fingers interlocked as he held her down. The familiar posture of leaning against the wall made Sun Yinger's heart beat faster. The girl blushed and turned her face to the side. You promised that you wouldn't do anything against the wall today? This is to help you remember your previous punishment. The mistake you made today is worth 407 planetside bashing. I've already memorized it. Why is it 407 times? So spicy. Sun Yinger protested. I'm happy. I set the number randomly. Wang Ying chuckled. If you behave yourself in the future, I can reduce your sentence. Then why don't you just exempt me from the punishment? Sun Yinger felt that she had found an opportunity. That's impossible. Otherwise, wouldn't I have wasted all those planets? Wang Ying said. Previously, I grabbed you and destroyed thousands of planets in the western part of the Milky Way. It was indeed a bit too much. So now, I've already sent my clone over to fix it. It should be fixed tomorrow. When it's fixed, I'll take you to the execution. In Wang Ying's opinion, a dishonest woman like Sun Yinger who was full of evil thoughts must be punished. Sun Yinger's face was full of grievance. Why do I understand? I think it's the same if I execute you the day after tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. You have to give me a chance to reduce my sentence. I don't want you to think. I want me to think. Wang Ying pinched Sun Yinger's skinny but smooth cheeks. He carefully felt the softness from his fingertips. He felt that the girl was about to cry. He couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Are you a fruit? You can cry just by pinching? Does the Void Master like to cry so much? Who cried? Sun Yinger pursed her lips and puffed up her cheeks, trying to hold back her tears. Very good. Wang Ying gently brushed away the tears on the girl's eyelashes. In the future, you are not allowed to cry in front of me. This is the 4th rule I set for you. Demon. You are a demon. Other than a demon, Sun Yinger felt that she couldn't find any words to describe Wang Ying. It seems that your understanding of me is not very clear. Wang Ying let go of Sun Yinger's hand. The man and woman stayed in this position for a long time. Only then did Wang Ying stand up from the ground. Also, the Lord has something to ask you. Who wants to tell you? Demon pervert. No. He's a perverted demon. Sun Yinger scolded in a very soft voice, as if she had used up all her strength. However, in Wang Ying's opinion, this kind of scolding sounded more like a spoiled child. Not only would it not anger others, but it also made Wang Ying want to bully Sun Yinger even more. He tried to control his urge to bully Sun Yinger and said in a calm tone, "If you answer well, you can reduce your sentence. Think about it." "I will." Sun Yinger quickly nodded. Once she thought about the 407 times she would have to face the planar wall tomorrow. Despair was written all over her face. At this critical moment, it was better to reduce as much as possible. "After you become the Lord of the Void, what will happen to the old Void Lord?" Wang Ying asked. "Of course he will retire. The Void creatures can't die anyway," Sun Yinger replied. "Very good." Wang Ying nodded in satisfaction. "I have a second question." "Tell me first." "I might not know. Do you know anything about the fortune teller? Since you are Miss Sun's shadow, I think you might have heard about the fortune teller. Isn't he just a swindler?" "I've seen what he looks like," Sun Yinger said. However, when the words were about to come out of her mouth, her mind suddenly went blank. She couldn't remember anything. This feeling terrified Sun Yinger. "This can't be. It's clearly in my mind. But why I can't remember it?" Sun Yinger's expression was abnormally anxious, and the teardrops began to roll in her eyes again. Wang Ying guessed that Sun Yinger didn't mean to not cooperate this time, so he didn't blame her. However, he couldn't understand why Sun Yinger was so anxious to the point that she was about to cry. "It's okay if you can't remember, I don't blame you," Wang Ying said. "Really?" Sun Yinger couldn't believe it. "Really?" Wang Ying nodded. Wang Ying's mouth was actually able to speak human language. She was afraid that Wang Ying would punish her again if she didn't answer the question. "Then how much can my answer reduce my sentence?" Sun Yinger asked. 406, Wang Ying answered. 406. That's a lot. Sun Yinger was surprised. "No, there are 406 more times. Reduce your sentence by 1. According to the value of your answer just now, it's only worth that much. Wang Ying, just you wait. One day, I will definitely escape to a place where you can't find me." Sun Yinger stared at Wang Ying and pouted. "You can try." Wang Ying shrugged and smiled confidently. Chapter 1343. Sun Yinger had been forced by Wang Ying to write her first self-reflection on the moon before she was released. Miss Yinger vividly showed how the word lowly was written in the wording of her self-reflection. She didn't have the guts to act rashly in front of Wang Ying. But when she actually wrote the self-reflection, she had already cursed Wang Ying more than 8,000 times in her heart. For every word she wrote, she cursed 10 times. Wang Ying didn't know where Yinger had learned these swearing words. They didn't seem to be the same. She was even more primitive than Zuan players. In response, Wang Ying set up a 5th rule: don't let your imagination run wild when you're writing, or you might increase the number of words in your composition. Sun Yinger knew she couldn't resist. She could only stretch out her fingers, pull at her eyelids, and stick out her tongue. She swore her dissatisfaction with this behavior. Just like a childish ghost. So that night, Wang Ying gave Sun Yinger a new nickname, calling her Ying 3 years old. When Wang Ying released her, Sun Yinger found Lotus Sun and Lu Qingyi in a video chat. Both girls were slightly red in the face, and seemed to be in the middle of a heated discussion. "What are you talking about?" Sun Yinger hurriedly moved closer and turned into a shadow next to Lotus Sunday. There were often people walking around the hospital, and Old Man Sun was next door. Sun Yinger was worried that her human form might be discovered, so she had made this decision. Compared with a human form, a shadow form was safer. Seeing that Lotus Sun wasn't surprised at all to hear her voice, Sun Yinger immediately knew that Lotus Sun had already remembered her existence. As expected of my woman. As expected of Rongrong. Missing, have you finished your self-reflection? You're very sincere, we've all seen it. On the other end of the video chat, Lu Qingyi couldn't help smiling when she saw Sun Yinger return. At the thought of how her self-reflection had actually been publicly executed, Sun Yinger's shadow turned red. He's too much. Why does he have to show everything to others? This Wang Ying. I'll definitely teach him a lesson in the future. Haha, Missing, don't be angry. It's actually nothing. President Ying is spurring you on. Lu Qingyi smiled. Cultivating in the void for 100 years might not be as beneficial as staying on Earth for a year. There were benefits to following Ling Jinren. If you really hate Wang Ying, all the more you should stay on Earth. Is that so? Sun Yinger was skeptical. And in essence your abilities all originate from the Shadow Dao. This was the great Dao ability that Ling Jinren's younger sister had created. If you want to beat Wang Ying, you'll have to curry favor with Ling Jinren's younger sister, said Lu Qingyi. Yes, I understand. Sun Yinger nodded. She had to admit that Lu Qingyi had given her a new train of thought. She was wondering why she couldn't use her Shadow Dao ability in front of Wang Ying. It was likely that Ling Jinren's younger sister had given this hateful Wang Ying some special privileges. What a shameful authority dog. According to Lu Qingyi's directions, as long as he curried favor with Ling Jinren's younger sister and obtained the same special ability as Wang Ying, he wouldn't have to be afraid of her anymore. At the very least he could shake off Wang Ying's pursuit. Now, Sun Yinger felt that her hatred for Wang Ying had reached a critical point. The claw mark left by Wang Ying on her wrist was like a golden hoop on Sun Wukong's head, making Sun Yinger want to take it off all the time. Rong, what are you talking about? I think it's quite lively. Sun Yinger asked at that moment. She wanted to join the conversation between the two women. It's nothing, just a little. Her face was boiling hot, and she was a little embarrassed to say the words. Lu Qingyi quickly took over. It's nothing, just some experience in love. Experience in love? But we're all single here. Sun Yinger thought it was a little funny. I'm afraid you two haven't really fallen in love yet. This old lady has a lot of experience. Lu Qingyi smacked the table and laughed. She was indeed single now. But in the domain of the gods, when she was still that lofty eldest miss of the Lu family, there had been a lot of suitors. And among so many suitors, it was inevitable that there would be a lot of ex-boyfriends. And this was what Lu Qingyi meant by experience. Sounds interesting. Sun Yinger said, then what kind of experience? For example, French kissing Lassie? At the thought of this, steam started to rise from the top of her head again. God knew why Sun Yinger, as her shadow, was actually so bold. She couldn't quite figure it out, but student Wang Ling's shadow Wang Ying seemed to have the opposite personality. She was a very domineering type. At this thought, Lotus Sun instantly felt a lot better. Because it seemed that she wasn't the only one who was troubled. Cough cough. Lu Qingyi cleared her throat. Falling in love is a process that every girl or boy goes through. I have experience, but it's only limited to emotional issues. I don't know about other conveniences. You'll have to explore it yourselves. Explore it ourselves? Can you be more specific? Lotus Sun felt that Lu Qingyi was being very vague. Lu Qingyi dropped her forehead into her hand and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You can only explore it yourselves. Do you want me and Miss Sun to simulate French kissing Lassie? Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger. But speaking of which, I also have to kindly remind you. At that moment, Lu Qingyi put on the attitude of a big sister and said, whether it's a girl or a boy, love is love, but you must learn to cherish yourself. Miss Sun is so smart, I think it's very easy for you to understand this. I know. Lotus Sun nodded. Then if you have any other questions you can ask me, Lu Qingyi said with a smile in the video. I do. Sun Yinger volunteered. How many boyfriends did Miss Lu have? I can't remember. A lot, said Lu Qingyi. She didn't try to avoid it, it was just that she really couldn't remember. But even with so many ex-boyfriends, Lu Qingyi was still able to cherish and love herself. Of all these ex-boyfriends, Lu Qingyi remembered that she had only kissed one ex-boyfriend. There were many that she hadn't even been able to hold hands with. Now that these memories had been evoked by Sun Yinger's words, Lu Qingyi felt a little nostalgic. Lotus Sun was about to ask a question when Sun Yinger raised another one. Then how many times did Miss Lu go to bed? Hearing this, Lotus Sun spat out a mouthful of water on the screen. Lu Qingyi was resolute. Not even once. Sun Yinger, wow. Then aren't you a 1,000-year-old virgin? The corners of Lu Qingyi's mouth twitched. She finally understood why Wang Ying couldn't help bullying Sun Yinger. Chapter 1344. Lotus Sun didn't have Sun Yinger's straightforwardness and venomous tongue. It could only be said that as expected of Miss Lotus Sun's shadow, the gap in their personalities was indeed obvious. The point was that while Sun Yinger had a venomous tongue, Lu Qingyi couldn't get angry at all. Yinger's voice was too soft. Even if she heard something outrageous, she would only want to pinch the girl's cheek hard. Miss Lotus Sun, if your personality and your shadow complement each other, I think it might work out. Lu Qingyi smiled in the video call. What? Lotus Sun felt inexplicably hot. With Ling Jinren, you have to take the initiative to drill a nail into that kind of blockhead for your relationship to be solid. Lu Qingyi analyzed. That's right, that's right. Sun Yinger chimed in. Missing can actually help, Lu Qingyi said. Help? Forget it. I still want to live a few more days. Sun Yinger was terrified at the thought of Wang Ying's terrible punishment. When I get the authority one day, I'll definitely teach that guy Wang Ying a lesson. I have to teach him a lesson. Missing, I'm afraid it won't be as easy as you think. Lu Qingyi smiled. Also, why do I feel that you actually don't hate him? After saying this, Sun Yinger instantly became excited. Lotus Sun saw that Sun Yinger's shadow wasn't as smooth as before. As if Lu Qingyi had hit the nail on the head, the shadow's silhouette was like an angry kitten, and it instantly became agitated. Who said that? He's the one I hate the most. After saying that, Sun Yinger slipped away through the crack as if she was fleeing, and who knew where she was going. In front of the screen, Lu Qingyi laughed hysterically. I finally know why President Ng likes to bully Miss Ng. Why? That reaction is too cute. Even his shadow is red when he's fleeing. Lu Qingyi couldn't stop laughing. Actually, even Miss Ng herself might not have thought that she might already like President Ng. Ah? No way. Wang Ying bullied him like that. Lotus Sun covered her little mouth. If she really hated him, why would she blush? Lu Qingyi sked as if she had seen through everything. It seems that this pair of shadows are going to start first. You two masters have to work hard too. Classmate Lu? What nonsense are you talking about? Lotus Sun touched her face and felt that her temperature was starting to rise again. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me anytime. That's all for today, Miss Sunday. Lu Qingyi smiled and ended the video chat. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. She chatted with Lotus Sun for less than an hour. When the words "video call terminated" appeared on the screen, Lu Qingyi heaved a long sigh of relief. Lotus Sun's questions were finally over. The matter between her and Wang Zhen hadn't been resolved yet. The people of the Wang clan were indeed all blockheads. She had already hinted so clearly, so why couldn't Wang Zhen take the initiative? Lu Qingyi felt very tired. However, she also had her own principles. When it came to matters of the heart, the one who spoke first would definitely lose. Hence, she would never open her mouth to Wang Zhen first. Instead, she was waiting for Wang Zhen to take the initiative to confess to her. Thus, in this situation it was very important to have a wingman who could make people jealous. Senior Gu. At that moment, Lu Qingyi turned her gaze to Gu Xuanji, who was watching TV. Gu Xuanji got goosebumps all over again when Lu Qingyi called him that. Miss Lu, what's the matter? How about going shopping with me at noon today? Let's be lovers for a day? Lu Qingyi asked. Gu Xuanji choked on his fat otaku Coca-Cola, and the shock on his face couldn't be any greater. Lovers? Lovers? On the other side, Sun Yinger, whose face had turned red from Lu Qingyi's words, hid to the side to write her reflection. Her first reflection had been written under Wang Ying's supervision. Although the words she wrote were sincere, they were not from her heart. Now that Wang Ying wasn't by her side, Sun Yinger could finally speak her mind freely. Wang Ying big pervert. Wang Ying big pervert. Wang Ying. Big. Change. *CK. Sun Yinger muttered to herself as she wrote the self-reflection. It was an 800-word reflection. She wrote the words Wang Ying big pervert 160 times. Then she smoothly tossed her pen. Done. It was still 5 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, December 2nd. Wang Ling knew that things weren't looking good. He already knew that Lotus Sun's memories hadn't been erased. Everyone was rushing to help her, which put Wang Ling in a very difficult position. A traitor in the crowd wasn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that everyone was a traitor. But to put it bluntly, these people were Wang Ling's friends and he wouldn't necessarily do anything excessive to them. Therefore he was in a dilemma. Wang Ling's first instinct was to escape. Escape was shameful, but it was useful. For several hours, Wang Ling studied the bug in his singles curse. He decided to fix the loopholes in singles curse once again. For Wang Ling, developing spells wasn't difficult. Instead, it was more difficult to check for loopholes. Because a lot of the loopholes in spells could only be found through practice. He hadn't used singles curse very often, and it was only after discovering a loophole that Wang Ling would fix. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Wang Ling filled in all the loopholes in singles curse. There definitely wouldn't be a reverse confession bug in singles curse. Now, as long as he put the halo of singles curse on himself, Wang Ling believed that he would completely become an insulator in love. Is it really okay to do this? I just feel like something's going to go wrong. Wang Ying lay on Wang Ling's bed, his head pillowed on his arm as he asked this question. He said he was concerned about Wang Ling, but in fact his mind was full of Sun Yinger. There were still 16 hours until the 406th planet banging session at 8 o'clock tonight. 16 hours was 960 minutes, or 57,600 seconds. Wang Ying always kept a timer in his heart. He felt like he was a little addicted to bullying Sun Yinger. Who the hell knew why he could give birth to a shadow with this kind of personality? Wang Ling felt that he was becoming more and more unable to understand Wang Ying. With this straightforward personality, it was very easy for problems to crop up in the future. But it wasn't convenient for him to get involved in the affairs of shadows. In any case, Single's curse had already been upgraded. Wang Ling's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally relaxed a little. This time there probably wouldn't be any more bugs. On the other side, Old Man Sun of Huagua Water Curtain Group. After Sun Yinger's secret reminder, he finally patted his head and remembered Wang Ling's confession last time. So it's this kid. The old man rubbed his hands together. He had always been very satisfied with Wang Ling. But even if Lotus Sun was interested in Wang Ling as a grandfather, he couldn't force a boy to like his granddaughter. They were only 16 years old. There was still a long way to go. Someone send me an internal secret message. Old Man Sun raised his arm and called out. Sir, what's the matter? Jiang Shaoche asked. There's a young man called Wang Ling. From now on, wherever he goes, as long as it's under our Huagua Water Curtain Group, upgrade all services to the highest level, and our group will bear all the costs. All the costs? Including getting a room? Jiang Shaoche laughed. Classmate Wang would never do something so outrageous. Get lost. The old man kicked Jiang Shaoche's butt. Chapter 1345. Wang Ling realized that something wasn't right with everyone recently. Ever since he was young. Except for his family members. In fact, Wang Ling had never been crazily pursued by a friend of the opposite sex. This was Lotus Sun's first time. This made Wang Ling a little flustered. Even though he tried his best to pretend to be calm. When he was in junior high, he had thought that he had a crush on a girl. But later, when he thought about it carefully, he didn't think that it might not have been a crush. Later on, Wang Ling felt that it was like an animal lover protecting an injured kitten on the side of the road in the rain. It was the sympathy and compassion of the strong for the weak. So until now, Wang Ling hadn't been able to pinpoint his feelings. Emotional matters were too complicated. He had protected Lotus Sun as a classmate. But, could that really be called liking her? Was it possible that it was also a kind of compassion for the weak? If that was the case, he might have let an innocent person get hurt again. Thus, escape became the path that Wang Ling chose. He knew that he would never be able to take the initiative like Wang Ying. That kind of indomitable spirit, that kind of vigorous vigor, perhaps it was Wang Ying's existence. Was that what he yearned for but was doing his best to avoid? Who knew? After a sleepless night, Wang Ling looked out the window and saw the sun rise in the east. It was another peaceful day. Wang Ling knew. Lotus Sun's matter hadn't completely come to an end yet. As long as the person behind the scenes wasn't caught, this matter would never settle down. Gu Xuanji realized that something wasn't right with the recent developments. First of all, Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen seemed to have a connection with each other, but so far neither of them had any intention of confessing. In the wee hours of the morning, his mother had actually asked him to pretend to be her boyfriend. Gu Xuanji instantly felt like he had been struck by lightning at this miraculous operation, which was even scarier than being struck by the divine lightning of heavenly tribulation. Of course, this had happened without Lu Qingyi's knowledge. In order not to expose his true purpose for transmigrating to Earth from the future, Gu Xuanji naturally couldn't expose the truth. But this still gave Gu Xuanji a headache. Before setting off, Gu Xuanji logged onto the Beep Q&A platform to ask questions about what was going to happen to him. Question: My mother wants me to pretend to be her boyfriend. What should I do? Answer 1. To be frank, this is really awkward. So, won't the question host send a photo of your mother? I think you can ask me. I'm a male turtle cultivator. I have a car and I have a ticket. Answer 2. I just got off the Immortal ship. The subject's mother must have been a female cultivator who cared about her appearance and paid great attention to taking care of herself. Judging from her behavior, your mother probably doesn't have any friends of the opposite sex. Otherwise she wouldn't have asked her son to pretend to be her boyfriend. The second answer hit the nail on the head, instantly rendering Gu Xuanji speechless. True that Lu. Most of the other core members of the battle sect knew who Lu Qingyi was, but they usually didn't have much interaction with her. She asked Ling who Zhu and Yi Ling, was Ling with him, Ling with Ling was she, Ling Teet Ling, was she didn't have the guts to look for Wang Ling. Since she dared to pair up with Ling Jinren, she had to come out and apologize. Furthermore, Lotus Sun would definitely misunderstand. A woman's jealousy was a very scary thing. Lu Qingyi still wanted to survive on Earth. And given her current economic strength on Earth, there was no way she could beat Lotus Sun. As for looking for Fang Xing, that was even more impossible. Because she was very clear. Fang Xing and Wang Ling were in the same boat. Furthermore, Fang Xing was very mischievous and might sabotage her plan. So in the end, Lu Qingyi turned this wingman's gaze to her. Gu Xuanji suddenly felt a little tired. Pretending to be his mother's boyfriend was a novel experience. Even as a keeper of order, he had never experienced it before. In that instant, Gu Xuanji felt his mind go haywire. He didn't know what to say. At noon, the nightmare that Gu Xuanji had been waiting for finally arrived. Lu Qingyi had dressed herself up beautifully. It was clear that the woman had been preparing for a long time for this plan. Even the clothes she was wearing were brand new, a light purple lace dress with black stockings and high heels. Set off by Lu Qingyi's exquisite figure, Gu Xuanji could indeed sense the alluring mother in the wedding photo album. Gu Xuanji had always seen Lu Qingyi wear number 60 high school uniform, but now that she was wearing this new outfit, she really looked like a different person. Clothes really made the man. What are you spacing out for? Aren't you going to change? Lu Qingyi couldn't help reminding Gu Xuanji when she saw him standing there in a daze. Change? Gu Xuanji looked down at his outfit. He was dressed casually and didn't feel out of place. You don't have a suit? This outfit doesn't match me. Lu Qingyi frowned. This kind of straight man's aesthetic was simply hopeless. Sure enough, there was still a woman in this family who taught the boys how to dress. Fortunately, she was already prepared and took out the high-end suit she had prepared. Where did you get the money? Gu Xuanji was startled. I had a love exchange with Miss Sun last night. Miss Sun was so happy that she sent me 100,000 yuan. It's only a matter of minutes to get a suit. Express delivery is so convenient now. The spirit sword will send it to you in a moment, Lu Qingyi said. This lesson is actually paid? Gu Xuanji was startled. Let me say this first, I didn't take it from Miss Sun, she forced it on me. She said that she'd have to trouble me later if anything happened. She also gave me a black card from Huaguo Water Curtain Group, which gives me a 30% discount on any product under Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Lu Qingyi smiled. She then took the initiative to take off Gu Xuanji's clothes, intending to help him change into them. Gu Xuanji was startled. What are you doing, Lu Qingyi? What else? I'm helping you change your clothes. This action instantly reminded Gu Xuanji of when Lu Qingyi had helped him change his clothes when he was a child. Then Gu Xuanji's memory went haywire for a brief moment. Thus, in a moment of desperation, Gu Xuanji let it slip. Mom, don't move. I'll do it myself. Mom? Lu Qingyi was stunned. What I mean is, please don't move, I'll do it myself. Gu Xuanji was quick-witted and immediately smoothed things over. Lu Qingyi patted Gu Xuanji's bouncy but stared at his crotch and couldn't help laughing. I've met countless people and seen everything. Why would I care about a few grams of your flesh? After saying that, Lu Qingyi turned the door handle in her high heels without looking back. Hurry up and change. I'll wait for you at the elevator. Gu Xuanji was already in a mess. Chapter 1346. A luxurious red convertible sports car was parked at the ground floor of the staff apartment. Lu Qingyi had rented the sports car with Huaguo Water Curtain Group's black card, and it cost 2,000 yuan a day. Now that she had some spare cash, she naturally wouldn't feel distressed over a mere 2,000 yuan. Since it was a bait to make Wang Jin jealous, today he had to settle everything in one go. No matter how much money she had to spend, Lu Qingyi wouldn't feel the pinch. Of course, he couldn't just leave and not enter. Gu Xuanji sat in the driver's seat and noticed that Lu Qingyi was chatting with someone. The woman's typing speed was incredibly fast. He didn't know where he learned the lightning finger technique, but his tapping speed was comparable to Takashi Kato. I'm chatting with classmate Lotus Sun, Lu Qingyi said as she typed. Talk about what? Gu Xuanji was curious. You're pretending to be my boyfriend today and my goal is to hook up Wang Jin so I can teach you how to be jealous. I reckon we'll have to spend a lot today so we can't just spend without spending. Lu Qingyi said with a smile. Gu Xuanji clicked his tongue. He felt that the woman in front of him was just as his father had said. She was a calculative person. He would never let himself suffer a loss. Didn't you say that you wouldn't accept money? Gu Xuanji asked with a smile. Nominally, of course it's free. That's doing Miss Lotus Sun a favor. In order to return the favor, Miss Lotus Sun would definitely give me a red packet. This way, I'll owe classmate Lotus Sun a favor and improve my relationship with her. At the same time, accepting the red packet won't make classmate Lotus Sun feel uncomfortable, said Lu Qingyi. Hearing this, Gu Xuanji was amazed in his heart. His mother's move was too brilliant, and he was left in the dust. Speaking of which, is there really friendship between girls? Gu Xuanji started the sports car and asked a curious question. In fact, he also wanted to hear his mother's opinion. Although pretending to be her boyfriend was awkward. However, this was also an opportunity for him to get to know his mother better. Of course there is. Lu Qingyi replied as she typed. The premise is that the boyfriends aren't the same. Otherwise, even if you're my best friend, you'll fall out with me at any time. Gu Xuanji, where are we going? The Changyang Cultivation Aquarium in the city center, Lu Qingyi said. Why go there? Wei Ji introduced Wang Zhen to a part-time job. There. Although it was a little tough, the pay was high. Since I want him to be jealous, of course I have to show off in front of him. Lu Qingyi imagined the scene in her head. Think about it. A man is working hard in an aquarium, and at that moment, the girl he's interested in suddenly shows up with a pretty boy and walks back and forth intimately in front of him. So I'm a gigolo? It's just an example, little brother. Don't mind it so much. Lu Qingyi said with a smile. Do you feel like you're burning with anger when you think about it this way? Indeed. Gu Xuanji nodded. Have you ever thought about what if I get beaten up by him? Come on, can he beat you? Lu Qingyi laughed. So, you've calculated everything? Gu Xuanji smiled wryly. I've been planning since I came back from the Nine Dragon Mountain tournament. Gu Xuanji sighed again. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. His mother was too scary. But from his own point of view, Gu Xuanji was definitely going to add to the mess. Otherwise, he would have to run away with another man. But if his mother ran away with another man, not only would his mother be gone, but he would also be gone. The above sounded a little like a curse, but it was definitely a cry from the bottom of Gu Xuanji's heart. Heavens! Save the child. Halfway through the sports car, Gu Xuanji asked another magical question. Have you ever thought about what if your operation fails? My plan is very detailed. It's impossible for it to fail. Lu Qingyi kept smiling. She was very confident in her sweet and sour carp plan. But what Lu Qingyi didn't know was, there was a surprise waiting for her in the aquarium, a few hours ago. In the early hours of that morning, Wang Zhen received a text message from Gu Xuanji. Lu Qingyi's sweet and sour carp plan was written on it. Actually planning to pretend to be my boyfriend to make me jealous. Wang Zhen stared at Gu Xuanji's message, the corners of his mouth twitching. This kind of behavior was no different from trying to provoke him so that he would confess first. What a vicious plan. Good brother. Thank you for telling me all this. Wang Zhen texted Gu Xuanji to express his thanks. Then he quickly deleted all the chat records. Lu Qingyi definitely couldn't do it alone. Thus, Wang Zhen made a decision. Take this opportunity to counterattack. You can find someone to pretend to be your boyfriend. Then I can also find someone to pretend to be my girlfriend. Let's see who gives in first. Then a brand new plan sprouted in Wang Zhen's heart. Of course, the premise of this plan was, he had to find someone who would pretend to be his girlfriend. For a moment, Wang Zhen was distressed. He didn't have many friends of the opposite sex. Quite a few girls from number 60 high were interested in him, and had even written him love letters. Wang Zhen read a few of them. They were so mushy. If he asked these little girls for help, they would naturally agree. But what Wang Zhen was afraid of was that this group of kids would take it seriously and turn it into a reality. At that time, not only would he not be able to catch Lu Qingyi, he would also be accused of playing with feelings. He thought about it. Wang Zhen thought of a very suitable candidate. It was just that it wouldn't be easy to invite this person. Using his lifelong literary skills, Wang Zhen tried hard to think of the right words. He sent a text message to the person he had in mind. 6 o'clock in the morning. Wang Zhen pretended that he had nothing to do and went out to work. This was a job that Wei Ji had recommended to him after returning from Nine Dragon Mountain when he heard that Wang Zhen was short of money. The main job was to be a breeder and feed them. Because spirit beasts were wild to a certain extent, Wang Jin might not have been chosen if it wasn't for his thick skin and his resistance to bites. The actual time of the report was 9 o'clock. But before that, Wang Jin needed to see someone first. In Fang Xing's family noodle shop. Brother Fang Xing. My happiness. I'm counting on you. Understand, Wang Jin knelt on the ground and kowtowed sincerely. Your matter sounds very interesting. It's not that I don't want to help, but I'll say this first. I don't accept large-scale contact. Don't worry, classmate Fang, I won't accept it either. I'm just putting on a show. At most, I'll borrow a seat. Borrow a seat? All right. Fang Xing smiled. Miss Lu has never seen me in female form. As long as I dress up a little, she won't recognize me. It's just that. It was just this favor. He couldn't do it for free. Wang Jin wasn't an idiot, and immediately understood what Fang Xing meant. Classmate Fang, what do you want? As long as I can do it, I'll do it. I'm not in a hurry. Let me ask you a question first. Fang Xing asked, I heard that a lot of people thoughtfully sent Miss Sun a USB flash drive to help her recover her memory? I didn't. Wang Jin's answer was resolute and decisive. Don't be so nervous, it's fine if you sent it. Miss Sun becoming a core member of Battle Sect is inevitable. If someone wants to send a USB flash drive, then so be it. What I care about is whether classmate Lotus Sun really likes classmate Wang Ling that much. At that moment, Fang Xing cupped his chin and spoke. Sounding out Lotus Sun's attitude had always been part of his plan. He felt that this was a particularly good opportunity. What do you mean, Brother Fang? I heard that Brother Wang Zhen is actually very popular at number 60 high. That's good. No need to be humble, Brother Wang Zhen. Fang Xing smiled. What I want you to help me with is actually as easy as lifting a finger. I want you to transfer the love letters from those girls to Ling Jinren's home and his desk. It'd be best if you also put a few copies in classmate Lotus Sun's desk. But Brother Fang Xing can also do this. Guys use different words than girls. Fang Xing voiced her distress. I often get letters from guys. Wang Ling was speechless. Wang Jin? Both genders, as expected of classmate Fang Xing, who was known as the heartthrob of millions. But will I be able to do it? But Wang Jin still had some misgivings about Fang Xing's suggestion. Why not? Just change the header a little. After removing the Zhen from Wang Zhen, it'll be classmate Wang. Who knows if it's for you or Wang Ling? Fang Xing said. May I ask why you're doing this? Wang Zhen was puzzled. Fang Xing smiled. I want to see if classmate Lotus Sun will be jealous. Fine. Deal. Thus, Wang Zhen gritted his teeth and agreed. At that moment, the two men reached a consensus. Chapter 1347. In the morning, Wang Ling chose a place to test out the effects of his improved singles curse. Normally, Wang Ling wouldn't be in the mood to specifically test spells. But there were still a few days before the start of school at number 60 high. Wang Ling had a lot of time to spare. In addition, he had finished his homework for the day and had already recorded his study video. So he might as well go out and test his spells. It was said that Headmaster Chen had spent a lot on the school's green environment. Wang Ling actually really wanted to see what would happen when classes resumed next Monday. He really wanted to see how number 60 high would change. Wang Ling dressed up very tightly. He didn't take off any of his mask, sunglasses, and cap. A high-collared linen windbreaker and a pair of slim-fit jeans showed off his good figure to the fullest. As for Wang Ling's outfit today, Book of Sage Immortal's comment was that he looked a little like a private detective who went out to investigate his mistress. So before Wang Ling left, he stuffed Book of Sage Immortal into Lord Ma's mouth. To test a spell, he naturally needed a suitable location. As for the location, Wang Ling already had an answer for it. The Changyang Cultivation Aquarium in the city center. It was a place where a lot of couples would hang out. That was right. The targets of Wang Ling's spell test were couples who openly displayed their affection in public places like the aquarium. But Wang Ling himself wasn't a member of the FFF team. Breaking up someone's marriage was a very wicked thing to do. So Wang Ling had actually made some preparations for this. He added a temporary additional condition to Singles Curse. 30 minutes after the spell took effect, the effect of Singles Curse would be removed, and the couple would completely forget all the unpleasant memories between the two of them. As long as this condition existed, Wang Ling could carry out the test normally without ruining the relationship between the young couple. At around 9 o'clock in the morning, Wang Ling had already arrived at the front of the aquarium. This was the largest aquarium in the city center. The entire building was made of glazed tiles in the shape of a whale. At noon there would be a fountain show at the top of the aquarium, and a large number of people would come here every day to watch. Even on a working day, the front of the aquarium was still unprecedentedly grand. There was a long line at the ticket window. Wang Ling had been in line for nearly 30 minutes. "Sir, please show me your second-generation ID card. You have to register with your real name to enter the venue," the young lady at the ticket window said politely. Wang Ling voluntarily handed over his ID card. After the young lady scanned his identity information, she stood up in shock. "I didn't know Director Wang was here. Please don't blame me, President Wang." The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. "Director Wang? When did he become CEO Wang?" "Director Wang, you can actually use the green passageway at the side. You can enter the coffin with your ID. You don't need to buy a ticket." The young lady smiled and politely pointed at the green passageway at the side of the aquarium. Wang Ling was confused and had no idea what was going on. After he left the group, he pinched his fingers and made a divination. Only then did he realize that it was Old Man Sun's doing. So this aquarium is also a property of Huaguo Water Curtain Group? Wang Ling had a slightly helpless expression on his face. "Aren't you a drug dealer? Why was the underground industrial chain so rich?" There weren't many people who could enter directly from the green channel, so Wang Ling didn't need to line up at all. As long as you swipe your ID card, the fence of the green passage will open automatically. "Welcome, Director Wang." As soon as Wang Ling swiped his ID card, the AI device in the fence made a sound, which gave him a fright. This was too high profile. It made Wang Ling feel a little uncomfortable. After entering the gate, a tall beautiful woman immediately took the initiative to greet him from among the row of VIP guides standing in front of the gate. "Director Wang, do you need a guide?" Wang Ling shook his head and refused on the spot. His main purpose was to test his spells, and it was too inconvenient for someone to follow him around. "Very well, Director Wang." The guide had a smile on her face the whole time, and then took the initiative to hand over a map of the venue. "Director Wang, you can use your ID card to enjoy free VIP service for all the facilities and restaurants in the aquarium." This map was specially made for the venue and had automatic positioning and navigation functions. Wang Ling could even directly place an order through the smart map. The staff in the museum would immediately send over the items he wanted. The night he opened the restaurant, Wang Ling scanned the dazzling array of high-end seafood delicacies. After discovering that there weren't any crispy noodle snacks, he angrily clicked the X in the top right corner of the map. Then he checked the map again and walked in the direction of the Lover Pavilion. In the Lover Pavilion, all the water spirit beasts kept in captivity appeared in pairs, and there were a lot of couples who would watch. For Wang Ling, this was the perfect holy land to test his spells. He followed the navigation function of the map all the way. At that moment, two familiar figures flashed past Wang Ling's eyes. He saw Wang Zhen in his aquarium uniform, and he also walked in the direction of the Lover Pavilion. Next to Wang Zhen, a very beautifully dressed girl gently held his arm. Wang Ling rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. At the same time, Wang Ling's heart shook like thunder. Wang Zhen in his work uniform. And Fang Xing in her female form. Why were these two people here? And it looked like they were very close. Wang Ling was a mess. When experts exchanged blows, every move was fatal. This was the current situation of Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. After parking the sports car in the aquarium's underground parking lot, Gu Xuanji gripped the steering wheel, sweat running down his temples. He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling. "What are you spacing out for? Get out of the car. Why do you look so preoccupied today?" Lu Qingyi felt that something wasn't right with Wang Zhen. Gu Xuanji opened his mouth and almost followed up by calling Lu Qingyi Mom. It wasn't easy to pretend to be Mom's boyfriend. Now, Gu Xuanji had to think carefully every time he opened his mouth. He couldn't go along with what Lu Qingyi said. If he said Mom carelessly, everything would be exposed. "I just don't think it's good for us to do this, right?" Gu Xuanji wanted to retreat, mainly because he really did have a very bad feeling about this. "I'm here, what are you afraid of? If anything happens, I'll take full responsibility." Lu Qingyi was very determined as she pulled Gu Xuanji's hand and dragged him out. Helpless, Gu Xuanji could only compromise. "Mom, slow down, Lu Qingyi." "Gu Xuanji, please slow down." Lu Qingyi let go and frowned. "Oh, this isn't the first time I've heard you call me Mom." Had he been discovered? Gu Xuanji's expression instantly tensed up. Just when he thought Lu Qingyi might have already guessed everything, at that moment, Lu Qingyi suddenly bent down and asked concernedly, "Do you have a very serious Oedipus complex?" Gu Xuanji? "It's okay, I actually don't discriminate against mom's baby. Even if you look younger than me, you can't just call a girl mom, understand? But given our working relationship, I won't be angry if you call me mom in private. Who asked my son to be so handsome?" Lu Qingyi smiled and reached out to rub Gu Xuanji's head. Gu Xuanji was shocked again. Damn her brain circuit, it was too amazing. For a moment he actually found it hard to resist. At that moment Lu Qingyi smiled. "So, since I'm your mom as a son, shouldn't you listen to mom and not let her get hurt?" Gu Xuanji wanted to cry but had no tears. "I want to grow up quickly so I can protect her." Lu Qingyi nodded in satisfaction. "Good boy. Come with mom and pretend to be a boyfriend." Gu Xuanji. Chapter 1348. Gu Xuanji actually regretted taking the initiative to inform Wang Zhen earlier. His original intention was to make Wang Zhen feel that his mother, Lu Qingyi, was a very scheming woman, and thus make Wang Zhen feel disgusted with her. In the end, he hadn't expected Wang Zhen to be agitated by Wang Zhen. He actually found a fake girlfriend to pretend to be a couple. The uneasiness in Gu Xuanji's heart intensified when he heard this news. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. As soon as Wang Ling entered the aquarium, Old Man Sun already had his eyes on him. The feedback mechanism of his ID card information sent Wang Ling's entry to Old Man Sun's cell phone. On the side, Jiang Xiaoche frowned. "Master, there's really something wrong with this person. He's a man, yet he went to the aquarium alone? Will there be any psychological problems?" Old Man Sun was obviously a little uncomfortable with Jiang Xiaoche's words. "Who said that a person can't go to the aquarium alone?" Jiang Xiaoche, "I feel that student Wang is definitely going to the aquarium today for an inspection. He must want to ask Rongrong out, so he came here in advance to do his homework." Today, Old Man Sun's imagination was as powerful as ever. Jiang Xiaoche, "Is that so? That must be it." Old Man Sun had always been very confident in his guesses. Actually, Changyang wasn't the only aquarium in the city center, so why had Wang Ling chosen it? They must have come because they knew that this was the property of their family group. It was obvious that he was here to do his homework for his precious granddaughter. Jiang Xiaoche said, "Even if what old master said is right, but he didn't have to spend money to invite Miss to this place. This is letting this kid off too lightly." Old Man Sun rolled his eyes. "What do you know? This was called having a sense of economy. Do you think classmate Wang will be like you, living a luxurious life? It's not easy for a 16-year-old to have such a frugal view of the economy. Should be encouraged." This time Jiang Xiaoche finally understood. Old Man Sun seemed very satisfied with his future grandson-in-law. This directly caused everything he said to be wrong. It was too difficult for him. However, Jiang Xiaoche felt that he still had a chance in the current situation. He had grown up with Lotus Sunday. Moreover, he had been secretly in love with Lotus Sun for a long time. How could he let someone else take over a cabbage that he had watched grow up? "Wang Ling, just you wait. The Sun family's grandson-in-law will definitely be me." Jiang Xiaoche swore in his heart. He had already assigned some tasks to the spies at the aquarium to trip Wang Ling up. From Jiang Xiaoche's point of view, since Sunny Yuan's eyes were already blinded, then he had to give him a strong dose of medicine. It would be best if Wang Ling did. Complete social death. He carrot undercurd. Today's aquarium was unexpectedly lively. In front of the lover house, many couples gathered here. This lover house is really interesting. Did you see that? All the spirit beasts in the restaurant come in pairs. A couple said through the huge glass wall in front of them. Many cultivators who were passionately in love even naturally hugged and kissed in such an atmosphere. This made Wang Ling feel out of place on his own. In front of the railing in front of the house, Wang Ling saw many couples writing their names on red ribbons for blessings, and then tying them to the railing. At that moment, through the glass wall, Wang Ling saw a pair of swirling spirit sea lions doing something indescribable. The male swirling spirit sea lion was lying on top of the female. Every time someone tied a red ribbon to the railing, the male sea lion's body would squirm 5 or 6 times. Wang Ling used the map in his hand to look up information on swirling spirit sea lions in the lover house. In the end, he discovered that they actually had another nickname, Water Teddy. Because they were naturally sensitive to red, male swirling spirit sea lions had an unusual reaction to red objects during mating, which greatly increased the chances of a female sea lion getting pregnant. Wang Ling. His knowledge had really increased. Wang Ling felt that the amount of information in front of him was even greater than when he had watched the world of spirit beasts as a child. But as a good teenager with a proper outlook on the world, Wang Ling wouldn't focus his attention on these embarrassing images. In contrast, what he was more concerned about was Wang Zhen and Fang Xing in her female form in the lover house. It's the zookeeper. Seeing Wang Zhen in his staff uniform appear, a passerby called out softly. At that moment, the female Fang Xing, who was pretending to be Wang Zhen's girlfriend, was next to him. She was holding a bucket, and Wang Zhen had his arm around her waist as he grabbed fresh fish from the bucket and fed it to her. This scene, which Wang Ling found incomparably painful to the eyes, actually made quite a number of couples who didn't know the truth feel that it was very romantic. Oh my god! The zookeeper is actually holding his girlfriend's waist the whole time. This boyfriend power is just too amazing. As expected of the lover house. Even the zookeeper came with his girlfriend. It's so sweet. Honey, I want to hold your waist too. Separated by the thick glass wall, the two of them talked and laughed, looking unusually intimate. Almost no one could clearly hear what this young couple was talking about. But Wang Ling could hear it clearly. The two of them looked like they were smiling, but were in fact communicating through ventriloquism. Brother Fang, isn't it a little too early for you to act? I don't think Qingyi is here yet. You don't understand, this is the only way it's real enough. I think the atmosphere's pretty good now. Once Miss Lu and Gu Xuanji arrive, we'll directly go big. Directly go big. Fake position. Oh, Wang Zhen was enlightened. But why is Brother Fang so skilled? You haven't eaten pork before, but you've seen a pig run. Fang Xing smiled. In fact, he had always planned to enter the entertainment industry, whether it was in a male or female form. As long as he made his debut, Fang Xing believed that he would definitely become an idol. For this reason, Fang Xing had actually read a lot of books on acting, and naturally knew how to fake a kiss. At that moment outside the glass wall, Wang Ling was once again thunderstruck by what he heard. What the hell? Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji were also coming here? Wang Ling was stupefied. Why was the circuit diagram so messy today? But no matter what the hell these two groups were up to, his plan to test out spells couldn't be interrupted. At that moment, Wang Ling's gaze was fixed on one of the couples in the room, and he shook his finger. At that moment, a valiant and familiar figure suddenly leapt into Wang Ling's line of sight. His spell had been aimed at the passers-by. But Wang Ling never expected Lu Qingyi to suddenly rush forward at that moment and block the passers-by couple. Wang Ling, oh ho! It's over. Chapter 1349. The effect of Single's curse was actually to block confessions and reverse psychological effects. As long as the target was under the effect of the spell, all the courtship and confessions that the target received during this period would be reversed. Like would become hate, strong points would become weak points. Take Lotus Sun's confession to Wang Ling as an example. For a previous review, see Chapter 1090, Ways to Attract Attention. The main thing was that Wang Ling hadn't expected Lotus Sun to actually imitate Xia Ming. When she had said the word hate, because of the spell's effect, it had instantly become like. But Wang Ling had now filled in this reverse loophole. That was to say, the current Single's curse wouldn't be in the same situation as last time. Furthermore, Wang Ling had added something else to the mix, which was the psychological reversal effect of Single's curse. When someone confessed, not only would the confessor say the exact opposite of what they wanted to express, they would even slap the other party, fully achieving the characteristics of being single based on ability. It was just that Wang Ling hadn't expected this spell to work on Lu Qingyi. It was really too much of a coincidence. Lu Qingyi actually directly emerged from the crowd and stood in front of that passerby couple. But the problem was that Gu Xuanji and Lu Qingyi were in fact a fake couple. Now, even Wang Ling didn't know what would happen next. In short, the charaba in the lover house today was exceptionally shocking. Even Wang Ling, who was watching from the side in secret, felt like he was shivering. When Lu Qingyi arrived at the lover house, through the glass wall in front of her, she saw Wang Zhen and another strange woman lovey-dovey. A surge of anger instantly bubbled up in her heart. But very quickly, the woman's rationality overcame the flames that suddenly sprang up. Since she could use Gu Xuanji as a fake boyfriend, Wang Zhen could naturally find a woman to pretend to be his fake girlfriend. This guy, what the hell was he doing? Actually, not only wasn't Lu Qingyi angry at this thought, she was actually a little happy. You were pretty angry just now, why now? Gu Xuanji was shocked at how quickly Lu Qingyi's expression changed. Think about it, this idiot actually thinks the same way I do. They all found a fake partner to impersonate in order to make the other party jealous. This proves that our brain circuits are actually quite similar. Lu Qingyi laughed at that moment. Gu Xuanji simply wanted to slap himself when he heard that. Sure enough, he had been too smart for his own good. He shouldn't have told Wang Zhen that Lu Qingyi had asked him to pretend to be her boyfriend. However, things had already developed to this point. Gu Xuanji still wanted to struggle. How can you be sure that the girl inside is fake? What if it's a real girlfriend? Real girlfriend? Lu Qingyi glanced coldly at Fang Xing, who was in female form, and chuckled. In any case, Wang Zhen is the young master of the Wang family. What kind of girl hasn't he seen in the domain of the gods? How could he find such an average-looking girl as his girlfriend? At that moment, Gu Xuanji looked up at the female Fang Xing. In her female form, Fang Xing had a unique style. She absolutely couldn't be called a common face, and her sexy and voluptuous figure made the imaginations of many male cultivators with Dao partners run wild. Is it really that impressive? The corners of Gu Xuanji's mouth twitched. Isn't that impressive? Although I haven't seen this girl before, I feel like I've seen her before. It's as if I've seen her somewhere before. Usually, people who have this kind of look aren't common. Lu Qingyi shrugged, completely disregarding the female Fang Xing as an opponent. Gu Xuanji felt that Lu Qingyi's terror was already indescribable. It could only be said that her King intuition was astonishingly strong. She had actually seen through so many things with just one glance. At that moment, Lu Qingyi suddenly pulled Gu Xuanji's hand forward a little. This angle was just enough for Wang Zhen to see them. She had already noticed that Wang Zhen was already looking in their direction out of the corner of his eye. She immediately looped her arms around Gu Xuanji's neck and began her plan of action. Then shall we begin? Begin what? Gu Xuanji's face was full of nervousness. His mother was too close to him. So close that Gu Xuanji could hear his mother's breathing and heartbeat. Gu Xuanji turned his face away. He was afraid that if he didn't pay attention, his mother would kiss him. Even though Gu Xuanji's first kiss had already been taken away by Lu Qingyi when he was born. But he was already so big now. Of course he couldn't accept his mother's kiss. Logically speaking, don't you keepers of order also know countless people? Why are you so nervous? Lu Qingyi thought Gu Xuanji's reaction was a little funny. Gu Xuanji instinctively dodged backwards. In fact, this wasn't a reaction from a young boy. Instead, it was an instinctive reverence for his biological mother. Unfortunately, in Lu Qingyi's view, Gu Xuanji's reaction was no different from that of a young boy who had just entered the field of love. You're too nervous. Forget it, I won't kiss you. I won't kiss you. Lu Qingyi sighed. She really wanted to kiss Gu Xuanji and was even going to stick out her tongue. But seeing Gu Xuanji's reaction, she suddenly couldn't bring herself to do it. You're going to kiss me? Gu Xuanji was stupefied. We're both adults. What's wrong with a kiss? Lu Qingyi smiled. At that moment, she glanced at Wang Zhen out of the corner of her eye. Look at the pair inside, they're acting so well. You can say that this borrowing is flawless. You can even tell? Gu Xuanji was astonished again. I've been through this after all. If it's a real kiss, the surface temperature of their bodies will keep rising, which will dry up the surrounding air and affect the humidity to some extent. I've already reached the point where I can judge whether the other party is really kissing based on the humidity of the surrounding air. Then little Gu, let's get started. At that moment, Lu Qingyi's gaze fell back on Gu Xuanji's face, and she cupped his cheek. Didn't you say you weren't going to kiss? You're too nervous and kissing would be too fake. How about this, confess to me but you have to say it out loud, got it? At that moment, Lu Qingyi gave Gu Xuanji another difficult problem. Confess to his biological mother? Gu Xuanji now particularly regretted agreeing to let Lu Qingyi pretend to be his boyfriend. Confess to his biological mother? That was too outrageous. Are you going to say it or not? Lu Qingyi looked at Gu Xuanji with great pressure. At that moment, Gu Xuanji really couldn't take the pressure anymore, and already had the idea of revealing the truth. But before he could say anything, Lu Qingyi's eyes darkened. Stop dawdling, if you're not going to say it, I'll say it. Then Gu Xuanji saw. Lu Qingyi abruptly cupped his face in her hands and loudly confessed in front of everyone. Bah! You're a two-timing scumbag. Crawl for me. Gu Xuanji? Even Lu Qingyi herself was shocked when she said this, because this wasn't what she wanted to say at all. But before she could explain, her right hand had already stretched out uncontrollably. The next moment there was the crisp sound of a slap. It was Lu Qingyi's slap on Gu Xuanji's face. Gu Xuanji wasn't on guard at all. After being hit by his biological mother, he flew out on the spot, smashed through the glass wall of the lover's house and smashed into the pool. For a moment, water splashed everywhere and a huge column of water shot up. Several sea lions were so frightened that they fainted on the spot. Wang Zhen was alarmed. Hadn't they agreed to pretend to be her boyfriend to make him jealous? Why had Gu Xuanji suddenly become a scumbag? Brother Fang, what's going on? Wang Zhen elbowed Fang Xing. On the side, Fang Xing was also bewildered. I'm very sorry, I don't understand either. Chapter 1350. Wang Ling hadn't expected his singles curse to actually appear like this. Gu Xuanji's entire body was sent flying. In that moment, Wang Ling felt as if all his movements had slowed down. Then Gu Xuanji made a full 360-degree spin and fell into the water, creating a huge splash. For a moment, the scene in the lover house became chaotic. Lu Qingyi didn't know why she had these thoughts and actions that were completely at odds with her will. Countless people's gazes fell on the chaotic scene. Lu Qingyi covered her face and swiftly fled the scene. What now? Fang Xing was speechless. I'll go take a look. Then what about Gu Xuanji? I'll have to trouble brother Fang to help me look after him. I'll settle the score with him when I come back. All right. Fang Xing nodded. Wang Zhen guessed that Gu Xuanji had most likely done something wrong to Lu Qingyi. Otherwise, how could Lu Qingyi have flipped out on the spot and gotten so angry in front of everyone? Without much time to think, he directly put down what he was doing and directly chased after Gu Xuanji. At the same time, Wang Zhen was also wondering what kind of grudge there was between Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji. He recalled what Lu Qingyi had shouted just now. To timing? What did that mean? Was there really something going on between Gu Xuanji and her? In the end, Lu Qingyi had found out? Wang Zhen was furious. The Grand Keeper of Order. How could she do such an absurd thing? When Gu Xuanji climbed out of the water, the aquarium's curator rushed over upon hearing the news. The curator was calculating the damage. The broken glass wall had to be completely replaced. This piece of glass alone would cost $500,000. In addition, there were the 5 sea lions that had fainted from fright floating in the water. Mental compensation was also needed. If they were frightened during mating, it was very likely that this batch of sea lions would have sexual dysfunction. Given that they were mating one-on-one, why would 5 sea lions have mental disorders? The answer was very simple, because 3 of them had chosen to have a meeting together. The rehabilitation costs are a lot of money. At that moment, the goateed curator looked at the scene in front of him with a worried expression. He was holding a calculator in his hand as he calculated the damage. At that moment, Wang Ling stepped forward and patted the curator on the shoulder. Wang Ling hadn't expected things to escalate to this point. Wang Ling felt that Gu Xuanji shouldn't be the only one to bear the cost. This wasn't a small expense, and given his limited pocket money, he definitely couldn't afford it. However, an equivalent exchange could still be conducted. The goateed aquarium director felt someone pat his shoulder, and when he turned his head, he saw Wang Ling's figure. It was the CEO Wang mentioned in the company's report. The curator immediately reacted. He had never seen Wang Ling before. But when he entered the building, he received a notification on his cell phone. Although there were a lot of people in the venue today, Wang Ling was the only high-class customer who could enter through the VIP passage. In addition, there was the VIP location map in Wang Ling's hand. The aquarium curator instantly identified the person. Wang Ling gestured for him to keep quiet, then looked at the mess in front of him. Then he handed a talisman to the aquarium curator. This was a death substitution talisman that Survival Heavenly Dao had drawn for Lotus Sunday. There were currently more than 60,000 of them in his drawer. This talisman wasn't worth much in Wang Ling's hands, but it was priceless outside. The aquarium curator could be considered a knowledgeable person. He carefully examined the talisman. Very quickly, he recognized that it was probably the legendary death substitution talisman. One talisman was worth hundreds of millions of yuan. Not to mention compensation. He could even build a new aquarium on the side. CEO Wang, wait. The curator hurriedly chased after Wang Ling and led him to a secluded spot. He said to Wang Ling in a low and respectful voice, "If these people are CEO Wang's acquaintances, then this museum won't pursue the matter of compensation. CEO Wang's death substitution talisman is priceless. This humble museum is overwhelmed by the favor and really can't bear it. Wang Ling shook his head. He was the cause of this incident, so compensation for the losses was only right. Furthermore, the death substitution talisman wasn't worth much to begin with. As long as he didn't have to hand over the crispy noodle snacks, everything was fine. The curator didn't dare accept Wang Ling's money, mainly because he was afraid of being blamed by his superiors. But now that he saw CEO Wang in front of him so resolute, he hesitated for a moment. Why don't I accept it first and then ask my superiors to return it? The curator thought. This was probably the best way to deal with it for now. On the other side, Old Man Sun was also extremely moved when he heard what had happened in the aquarium. Wang Ling, Wang Zhen, and the other two were classmates to begin with. Thus, Old Man Sun didn't think it was strange that Wang Ling had helped them. In fact, Old Man Sun actually didn't care at all about what had happened to Lu Qingyi and the others. All his thoughts were focused on Wang Ling, as expected of classmate Wang Ling. Old Man Sun pounded the table in excitement. Who knew how happy he was? Isn't it just helping a classmate compensate money? On the side, Jiang Shaoqi wiped at his sweat. What do you know? Classmate Wang Ling was actually willing to put his life on the line for the sake of a few classmates' emotional disputes at the aquarium. Such loyalty is very much like this old man when I was young. After saying this, Old Man Sun flashed his phone. Do you know what this is? This was a photo of a talisman taken by the director of the aquarium. Since the curator didn't know how to deal with the death substitute talisman, he sent it to Old Man Sun as soon as he took a photo. This looks like a death substitution talisman? When Jiang Shaoqi saw the photo, he was also shocked. This kid, how can he have this? The price of the death substitute talisman was well known in the industry. Moreover, such a life-saving item was something that some people couldn't even buy with money. Because the number of people who could create such a talisman was extremely limited. Right now, the number of death substitute talismans circulating outside was pitifully small. This death substitution talisman is not something an ordinary person can draw. Given classmate Wang Ling's family background, this old man speculated that this talisman was probably his family heirloom. I never thought that classmate Wang would actually use the death substitute talisman to compensate for the damage to the stadium on behalf of other students. What a silly child. He should know that he's already a high-class VIP of our corporation, so he doesn't have to waste this money, Jiang Shaoqi said with a frown. This is where the problem lies. Student Wang purposely left this death substitute talisman behind because he doesn't want to owe our company a favor. With the value of this death substitute talisman, Student Wang is worthy of being our VIP customer. This shows that Student Wang is a person who understands the ways of the world. At that moment, Old Man Sun sighed. Also, look at the photo the curator took. This death substitute talisman is clean and tidy, as good as new. It's as if it was newly drawn. The old man didn't say anything else. A super talisman like the death substitute talisman couldn't be easily drawn. Most of the time, the death substitute talisman was something that high-level almighties knew that they were approaching the end of their lifespans and were unable to break through. These death substitute talismans could then be passed on to their disciples and grand-disciples to save their lives at critical moments. Thus, the death substitute talisman was also known as an item of great limit, and was incomparably valuable. What shocked Old Man Sun was, Wang Ling was actually able to preserve his family heirloom as if it was newly drawn. This kind of love and cherishing made Old Man Sun even happier. As expected of the boy that his precious granddaughter Rong Rong had taken a fancy to, he was indeed extraordinary. Chapter 1351. Lu Qingyi left the stadium as if she was fleeing. She had never expected things to turn out like this. The sweet and sour carp plan had failed. And she had lost so much face in front of Wang Zhen, the woman felt utterly ashamed and resentful. After leaving the stadium, she immediately sped toward the seaside on her flying sword. Lu Qingyi now felt that she needed to find a place to calm down. Earth wasn't the domain of the gods and there was no spirit sea. The coast of Songhai City could barely be considered a makeshift place. Wang Zhen was worried sick, and hurriedly took out his spirit sword to follow Lu Qingyi's aura. He flew so fast that he attracted the attention of the traffic police patrolling in the air. "Comrade in front, please stop, you're exceeding the speed limit." The police uncle also followed closely behind Wang Zhen on his sword. But Wang Zhen was really too fast, he couldn't track him at all. In the end, he could only take a photo of Wang Zhen and use big data to search for information. After finding out that Wang Zhen was a number 60 middle school student, the police uncle had a puzzled expression on his face. Could a Foundation establishment cultivator be this fast with a sword nowadays? It was too dangerous. But considering that Wang Zhen was a student, the traffic police didn't issue him a huge fine in the end, and instead issued number 60 High a warning letter. When number 60 High resumed school next Monday, criticism and education for Wang Zhen would definitely be unavoidable. Lu Qingyi arrived at the seaside. Before she could calm down, a familiar voice came from far behind her. Qingyi. It was Wang Zhen's voice. Was this guy here to laugh at her? Lu Qingyi bit her lip and immediately prepared to enter the sea. As an opponent, the woman didn't want Wang Zhen to laugh at her. From a distance, Wang Zhen looked at Lu Qingyi's posture as she prepared to enter the sea, and all his hair stood on end nervously. Qingyi, don't. He didn't have time to think at all and sped up. In the end, when he arrived, Wang Zhen discovered a very serious problem. He couldn't stop. Then, bang! There was a muffled sound. Lu Qingyi felt a figure smash into her spine at a very fast speed. It actually directly rolled her into a ball, and then started to roll forward at a very fast speed. Bayu, because Wang Zhen had cut in at a tricky angle, after he and Lu Qingyi crashed into each other, the two of them directly skipped on the surface of the sea. After who knew how many ripples, they finally sank into the sea with a plop. After emerging from the water, Wang Zhen carried Lu Qingyi back to the shore in a princess carry. Wang Zhen put Lu Qingyi down and she felt a sharp pain in her back. Slow down. I'm sorry, does it hurt? Wang Zhen was in pain. You idiot. He's so impatient. Lu Qingyi wanted to rebuke him, but when she saw Wang Zhen's worried expression, her voice gradually faded away. I thought you wanted to commit suicide. Wang Zhen rubbed the back of his head with an embarrassed expression on his face. Who would commit suicide for something like this? Besides, this isn't the divine sea. Can the seawater on earth drown us cultivators from the domain of the gods? Lu Qingyi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What do you mean by that? Isn't Gu Xuanji your boyfriend? He's two-timing and hurt you. Wang Zhen's face was filled with rage. Don't worry, when I get back, I'll definitely beat him up. Beat him up? He's a keeper of order, and you're going to beat him up with your head? Lu Qingyi didn't directly expose the truth. Seeing Wang Zhen's interesting reaction, she almost subconsciously followed up on his words. Then I'll go beg Ling Jinren. There's always a way to deal with scumbags. Even if I have to kneel down in front of Ling Jinren, I want him to help me. Wang Zhen said with a serious expression. It was said that a man's knees were gold. Given Wang Zhen's temper before he had been trapped on Earth, there was no way he would kneel to anyone. Now Wang Zhen's temper had indeed changed a lot, and he had become more modest. Besides, the person kneeling was Ling Jinren, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Are you worried about me? She thought Wang Zhen had come to laugh at her, but never thought that this idiot would actually be worried about her. I just can't stand it. Cheating on two boats. Why aren't you angry at all? Wang Zhen said stubbornly. Because I was the one who invited Gu Xuanji to act in the first place. Lu Qingyi finally revealed the truth. Actually, those words and that slap weren't my intention. At the time, it felt like I was a little out of control, like I was possessed. So the reason you ran away was, idiot. I thought you chased me out to laugh at me, said Lu Qingyi. She reached out to wrap her arms around Wang Zhen's neck and pull his face down a little. At that moment, his clothes were already soaked in seawater and he was covered in sand. For a moment, it was a charming scene. Even with the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, Wang Zhen could still clearly hear his own heartbeat. The throbbing of his heart like a monkey and a galloping horse left both of them absent-minded. Then Wang Zhen cupped Lu Qingyi's cheeks and kissed her fiercely. Nothing needed to be said, in the distance. Looking at this scene, Gu Xuanji felt that the situation was hopeless. These two people were together, then he might also cease to exist. Gu Xuanji was even prepared for the worst-case scenario of him disappearing. But the strange thing was, his body actually hadn't disappeared. Gu Xuanji was sure that he hadn't mistaken his mother for someone else. The Lu Qingyi in front of him was definitely his real mother, so, what was going on now? Gu Xuanji frowned. There was probably no one who could give him an answer now. It was Ling Jinren. Wang Zhen took Lu Qingyi to the hospital. He confirmed that the impact just now hadn't affected Lu Qingyi at all. Then they returned to the staff apartment. In the elevator, their fingers were tightly intertwined. I told you it would be fine. This bit of impact can't hurt me. Lu Qingyi said, see, the money was wasted, wasn't it? Arte. I'm not that petty. In any case, there's no harm in checking. At least I know that your body can withstand an impact. Wang Zhen smiled and whispered in her ear, maybe the impact will be even more violent in the future. You're an adult, don't be serious. Lu Qingyi blushed. After all, Wang Zhen had already been given a speeding ticket today. Ding. At that moment, the elevator doors slowly opened, and Lu Qingyi saw a lot of employees in Huagua Water Curtain Group's uniforms moving things into the house under the direction of an old auntie. Did you buy something online? Wang Zhen was puzzled. No, I didn't buy it. Lu Qingyi shook her head. At that moment, the old auntie in charge of the scene came over and bowed to Lu Qingyi with a smile. Hello, Miss Lu, I'm Chiu Shuyun, the head maid under eldest Miss Lotus Sunday. Everyone calls me Auntie Chiu. Hello, Auntie Chiu. Lu Qingyi nodded. So, what's going on now? This is a master-disciple gift that Miss Lotus Sun asked us to deliver, Auntie Chiu said with a smile. Master-disciple gift. Lu Qingyi was startled. Miss Lotus Sun already knew everything over the phone. She also said that Shifu Lu is very scheming, and that she has a lot to learn from. From now on, our young lady's happiness will depend on Shifu Lu. Chapter 1352. Wang Ling had expected Gu Xuanji to come and beg him. After all, if a person didn't have no other choice, there was no way he would agree to be his mother's fake boyfriend. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were in love, and Wang Ling calculated their relationship lines. This was a happy ending. That was to say, there was no possibility of them breaking up later on. Given this premise, there was a big question as to why Gu Xuanji could continue to exist. He was someone who had transmigrated from the future, and his initial goal had been to stop Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi's relationship, but things had turned out contrary to his wishes. I actually didn't expect them to progress so quickly. After all, there's still some time before my dad comes back from his trip to the galaxy. My parents got to know each other after my father returned from his trip to the galaxy. In Wang Ling's bedroom, Gu Xuanji sat on his knees in front of him and sighed. Jinren, I can only rely on you now. Also, I suspect that someone put a curse on me when my mom slapped me today. If it's convenient for you, Jinren, could you also help investigate this? Wang Ling looked a little hesitant. After all, he was the culprit behind the whole thing. His initial goal had just been to test out Single's curse and give it a good job. He hadn't expected things to get out of hand. Furthermore, the memory loss restriction hadn't been activated. This was probably because Gu Xuanji and Lu Qingyi weren't a real couple. Wang Ling's original purpose for setting up the memory loss mechanism was to prevent couples from separating. But now, not only had Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen not separated because of Single's curse, they were together. Thus, the memory loss mechanism hadn't worked as it should. Seeing Wang Ling's hesitant expression, Gu Xuanji thought that he had made too many demands, which had made Wang Ling unhappy. Thus, he hurriedly corrected himself. My matter is more important. Ling Jinren, if you think it's too troublesome to investigate the person who put the curse on you, I can investigate it myself. I'll definitely make that person come out and apologize in person. Wang Ling didn't doubt Gu Xuanji's investigative abilities as a keeper of order. But he had to get to the bottom of this matter as soon as possible. Fortunately, he was prepared. While Gu Xuanji was speaking, a branch quietly stuck out from the toilet in Wang Ling's bedroom. Pa! A heavy blow landed on the back of Gu Xuanji's head. I didn't let you down. The physical amnesia technique is a success. This was a tree branch that could speak. After confirming that Gu Shun had fainted, it let out a bell-like laughter. Wang Ling had already anticipated that Gu Xuanji would come, so he had permanently strengthened a branch of the cosmic god tree for the physical amnesia spell. Why was it permanent? Wang Ling felt that he might miss you in the future. The physical amnesia spell was very simple and Wang Ling could do it himself. It was just that he couldn't be precise and attacking the head might send it flying. The reason why they had set their sights on the cosmic god tree was also because, working with Lord Ma, the cosmic god tree could now extend its branches wherever it wanted. This way it would be much easier for him to use the physical amnesia spell. As long as he summoned the cosmic god tree in his mind, a strengthened branch would instantly appear on the back of the target's head and whip it. Most importantly, Miss Yu's control over her strength was outstanding. Not only would there not be any sequelae after being drained, but there would also be no repercussions. The psionic energy of the divine tree on the branches could even seep into the cerebral cortex, making those who had been sucked feel refreshed after they woke up. Roughly 10 seconds later, Gu Xuanji woke up. His complexion was clearly much better than before he had arrived at the Wang family's small villa. Gu Xuanji had no idea what had just happened. It was as if he was just in a daze. After his consciousness returned, he saw Wang Ling earnestly helping him sort out the timeline. Ling Jinren is such a good person. Gu Xuanji sighed in his heart. Wang Ling, according to the clues provided by Gu Xuanji, his father, Gu Qing, had only met Lu Qingyi after returning from a trip. Their relationship quickly warmed up and soon they gave birth to him. The matter of Gu Qing coming to the Divine Realm's Lu family to propose marriage was also recorded in the Divine Realm's history. After the two families united by marriage, the Lu family's position among the 10 great families of the God domain could be said to have taken a meteoric rise. Very quickly, the Lu family rushed to the 3rd place, making a fool out of the Zhou family who was originally ranked 3rd. In order to prove that what he said was true, Gu Xuanji also produced a lot of photographic evidence. The alluring woman in the photo was, without a doubt, Lu Qingyi herself. After the two of them got married that day, rumor had it that Wang Zhen was disheartened and never returned to the Divine Realm again. At first glance, this seemed to be the case, but Wang Ling felt that there might be more to it than meets the eye. My lord, I have something to say. At that moment, Book of Sage Immortal's voice rang out. Wang Ling had casually stuffed Book of Sage Immortal into Lord Ma's mouth last time, and it looked like he had already reflected on his actions. But death could be spared, but punishment couldn't be forgiven. Wang Ling had never given up on giving Book of Sage Immortal away. Is this Lord Holy Book? Gu Xuanji turned his head and bowed. Based on the timeline, I already have a reasonable answer, said Book of Sage Immortal. He planned to speak out his reasoning in exchange for a chance to atone for his crimes. Lord Holy Book already has an answer? Gu Xuanji was startled. That's right. Book of Sage Immortal said, everyone thought that Wang Zhen was disheartened after losing Lu Qingyi, so he left the divine realm of the gods and never came back. In that case, is there another possibility that Wang Zhen and the real Miss Lu eloped? The real Miss Lu? The corners of Gu Xuanji's mouth twitched in shock. After all that trouble, it turned out that his mother was a fake? Impossible. I definitely didn't mistake my mother for someone else. Gu Xuanji retorted. I used my tracking privilege as a keeper of order to secretly mark my mother's soul with a soul imprint, and then tracked her here. There's no way I was wrong. Indeed, you weren't wrong. But you also have to remember that if the target you marked is an object produced by the original body, then when you track it, the mark will fall back on the original body before the target is produced. Although Book of Sage Immortal's words were very hard to pronounce, Gu Xuanji already seemed to understand what was going on. Lord Holy Book means, from the very beginning, the one your father liked was Miss Lu's shadow. And your mother is also Miss Lu's shadow. It's just that at this time Miss Lu's shadow hasn't awakened yet. So the mark you made in the future will ultimately fall back on Miss Lu's original body. So that's how it is. Gu Xuanji was lost in thought. This deduction is correct 78% of the time. After saying this, Book of Sage Immortal sighed. If it wasn't for the fact that my lord is a single dog, which affects some of my judgment on emotions, the accuracy would be even higher. Wang Ling? Wang Ling? Chapter 1353. Gu Xuanji hadn't expected the truth to be like this. It turned out that he was the child of Lu Qingyi's shadow. Gu Xuanji's mood immediately became complicated when he heard this result. Even if the shadow had awakened spiritual intelligence, it was still a manifestation of the original body. Since this was the case, Lu Qingyi's shadow could in fact also be called Lu Qingyi's daughter. Because of this, the relationship between him and Lu Qingyi's original body seemed to become even more complicated. Before this, Gu Xuanji had always regarded Lu Qingyi's original body as mom. But in fact, he should be calling her grandma? You look like you're in a complicated mood. At that moment, Book of Sage Immortal said, but it's not incomprehensible. After all, your mother has suddenly become your grandma, there's bound to be a sense of difference. You should be more open-minded. Having an old person at home is like having a treasure. Gu Xuanji, Wang Ling, When Gu Xuanji returned to the staff apartment that day, he had just arrived at the door when he found Lu Qingyi holding Wang Zhen's arm as they chatted and laughed as they waited at the elevator door. The two of them dressed lightly and looked like they were about to go out as they interacted intimately. Gu Xuanji wanted to say something but stopped himself. It was mainly because he was hesitating between calling her grandma and mom, and didn't know which was better. Yeah, I know, brother Gu. Don't be sad. At that moment, Wang Zhen looked up at Gu Xuanji and patted him on the shoulder sympathetically. Although Gu Xuanji was a keeper of order, he usually lived together in Wang Zhen's house and didn't put on any airs, so Wang Zhen and Gu Xuanji also called each other brother. Now, Gu Xuanji's mood became even more complicated as he stared at the grandfather, who called him brother. What do you know? Qingyi said that you have a serious Oedipus complex, said Wang Zhen. Don't worry, since I'm with Qingyi, I'll definitely keep my mouth shut about this. I won't tell anyone else. Wang Zhen said, keepers of order are under a lot of pressure, so it's normal for them to have some quirks. I heard my dad talk about even stranger cases before. There was a keeper of order who had been single for a long time, so his shadow was pretty. He actually had desires for a woman's shadow. Gu Xuanji didn't want to continue discussing this topic and quickly changed the topic. Where are you going now? It's like this, Qingyi and I have discussed it and we've decided to look at some houses and move out. Are you rich now? Qingyi is now Miss Lotus Sun's Shifu. Miss Sun said that as long as it's a property under Huagua Water Curtain Group, you can just tell her if you like any property. Then? I wish you happiness, Gu Xuanji said. Then he walked to his bedroom without looking back. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be feeling so down. Since he knew that his mother wasn't Lu Qingyi herself, he should be happy. However, too many things had happened today and the amount of information was too much. For a moment, Gu Xuanji felt like he had indigestion. What happened to him? Wang Zhen was a little puzzled by Gu Xuanji's reaction. In any case, the three of us are from the domain of the gods. If we leave just like that, wouldn't it be bad to leave him here? Lu Qingyi said worriedly. You're right. Then we can just find him a roommate, Wang Zhen said. You mean Zhao Qingxian? In any case, we've already moved out and are together, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Wang Zhen suddenly hugged Lu Qingyi like a giant wolf dog. This fatty has never been a law-abiding person in the domain of the gods. In any case, old Gu is a keeper of order. I believe Zhao Qingxian won't act too rashly under the watchful eyes of a keeper of order. You're right. Lu Qingyi nodded. Also, I remember that the Zhao family also runs a beast shop in the domain of the gods. He can also help Wei Ji. At the very least, he's much better than us two idiots. Wang Zhen laughed. Where's Zhao Qingxian now? I asked around before. He's suspicious because he's an unregistered resident. He's still in the detention center. I'll call Rongrong later and have her arrange for someone to get Zhao Qingxian here. What do you want to eat tonight? Western or Chinese? Wang Zhen asked. Either is fine. Lu Qingyi smiled. Then, barbecue? That's too oily. Is there anything else? Hot pot. Hot pot is so boring, it's all sauce. Then what do you think? Either is fine. Thursday, December 3rd. It was the day Lotus Sun was officially discharged from the hospital. At her request, the old man chose to keep a low profile. He didn't make a big deal out of it, nor did he find a bunch of reporters to hold a press conference or something like that. After experiencing this incident, old man Sun truly felt that his precious granddaughter seemed to have matured a lot. She had become more prudent in doing things. It's said that classmate Wang Ling likes to keep a low profile. I'm afraid that Rongrong has also been influenced by him. In the car, old man Sun was actually very pleased. Everyone had been young once. Under the basic conditions of being in love, one's behavior would also lean toward the person they liked, and then some changes would occur. For example, if a person who wasn't good at academics fell in love with a straight-A student, then perhaps they would put a lot more effort into their studies. Doing your best to keep in step with the person you liked was also part of being in love. Hence, old man Sun was very clear about his own position in Lotus Sun's pursuit of Wang Ling. He could only be a long-range support and couldn't interfere too much. Furthermore, he couldn't use his own company's wealth and power to disrupt classmate Wang Ling's life. Not only would this cause trouble for Wang Ling, it would also thwart his precious granddaughter's plans. Rongrong, you can do it. Old man Sun couldn't help cheering in his heart as he watched the girl walk into the villa. Old master, where are we going now? To Battle Sect. I have an appointment with Director Zhua. Okay. The driver nodded and quickly stepped on the gas. Back in her bedroom, Lotus Sun saw that the furniture that had been burned down by the great sacrificial spell had been restored, and were all newly bought, just as they had been before she left. Knowing that Lotus Sun was being discharged today, Auntie Chio had ordered the exact same furniture in advance, and had someone install it overnight. Thank you, Auntie Chio. Lotus Sun smiled politely at Auntie Chio. Miss, you're too kind. This is something this old one should do. I have other things to do. If Miss needs anything else, just give me a call. Okay. Lotus Sun nodded. She saw Auntie Chio respectfully withdraw and close the door. She couldn't wait to turn on her computer. There were too many things recorded in the cloud disk. The girl had only seen less than 10% of them in the hospital. And now, those when she was in her soul state. Bits and pieces of memories that she had personally recorded in her little notebook. In an instant, all of them had been released. But as she said this, she suddenly felt that her body was indeed a little uncomfortable. It was all because Wang Ying's planet-knocking art was too powerful yesterday. You don't feel well? Do you need me to give you a massage? Great. Rongrong is the best. Mua. Sun Yinger rushed over and kissed Lotus Sun on the cheek. It's all this Death King's shadow's fault. 406 times. Finished in one night. My back hurts from the collision. Lotus Sun, Sun Yinger, hey. Rongrong. Why is your face red again? Eat my cooling spell. Elsewhere in Battle Sect, Old Man Sun and Ajwa had arranged to meet in the true venerated Great Hall. After exchanging greetings, they took their seats. A Battle Sect disciple came over to serve them tea. After the tea was served, the disciple tactfully withdrew and closed the door. He made sure that no one would disturb them in the Great Hall. Director Zhua, I'm here today for one thing only. I'm a straightforward person and I don't beat around the bush, so I hope that you can be honest with me. Old Man Sun smiled. As for the benefits, I'm sure you'll get them as well. I know that the Alliance of 10,000 Schools is about to elect a new leader. If you don't hide anything from me, I'll do my best to garner votes for you. Ajwa smiled. Mr. Sun, you're exaggerating. Sugar-coated bullets don't work on me. I want to hear your question first. If it involves a friend's secret, I naturally won't say a word. As expected, Director Zhua is a loyal man. Old Man Sun nodded. What he had said just now was just a test, and Ajwa indeed hadn't disappointed him. Actually, whether or not he got the answer he wanted from Ajwa, Old Man Sun would still help him in canvassing for votes. He knew that Ajwa had also put in a lot of effort behind the scenes in Lotus Sun's matter this time. There was no way he, Sunny Yuan, would not return this favor. Don't worry, Director Zhua. What I want to discuss this time isn't your friend's secret. It's Director Zhua's own secret. Old Man Sun smiled. Ajwa's expression froze slightly at these words. His secret was none other than his relationship with Wang Ling. Could it be that he had already been exposed? That shouldn't be the case. Ajwa frowned. So, Mr. Sun, what do you want to ask? In such a short period of time, Director Zhua was able to rise to the position of Director of the General Administration of 10,000 Schools and repeatedly perform miraculous feats. He is deeply favored by Secretary Sun of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. In fact, I'm here this time to find out more about student Wang Ling, Old Man Sun. So, I need to confirm whether the relationship between Director Zhua and student Wang Ling isn't as simple as it seems on the surface. Ajwa's expression darkened. Student Wang Ling and I are just a normal senior and junior brother. The same as student Lotus Sunday, not necessarily Director Zhua. At that moment, Old Man Sun chuckled. Since I'm here today, I'm definitely prepared. I never fight when I'm unprepared. I'm certain that Director Zhua and student Wang Ling's relationship isn't as simple as it seems. Ajwa, where on earth did you get this information, Mr. Sun? It's just the result of a precise analysis of the information I've gathered. Hearing this, Old Man Sun chuckled. So, Director Zhua, just admit it. Ajwa feigned ignorance. Admit what? Old Man Sun, you? Student Wang Ling's Shifu. Am I right? Ajwa. P.S. I've seen your reaction regarding the issue of blocking the Immortal King web version. This is actually an anti-piracy measure. If you want to be the first to see updates, you can only do so through the Chidian reading app. I know that there are a lot of Immortal King chapters and some of you can't afford to read pirated versions. I hope you don't publicize it and can just read it secretly. But if you've caught up with the latest chapters, I hope you can come to the original version and spend a few cents a day to support Pai Pai Ku's creation. The more readers there are of the original version, the better the motivation to create. Chapter 1355. Ajwa felt that this might be the biggest scapegoat he had ever carried in his life. It could only be said that Old Man Sun was in the end Old Man Sunday. This ability to avoid the right answer. It turned out that you were the legendary, ultimate Maori Little Wulong. At least there were times when Little Wulong got it right, but Ajwa realized that the amazing thing about Old Man Sun was that he always seemed to be able to perfectly avoid all the right answers. Who would have thought that I would still be found out? At that moment, Ajwa rested his chin on his fingers and leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, pretending to be deep in thought. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't deny it. Although this was a huge scapegoat, now that things had come to this, he could only accept it. In the end, Director Zhou admitted it. Old Man Sun looked like he had everything under control. He was absolutely confident that he would be able to make Ajwa admit to this matter, mainly because he had enough evidence on hand. How did Mr. Sun find out about this? Ajwa was very curious about this. You and classmate Wang have known each other for a long time, perhaps even before number 60 High's first Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As for what happened that day at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet, I specifically asked Rongrong about it. Old Man Sun began to make a brilliant deduction. Rongrong said that in your solo Spirit Sword performance, you chose classmate Wang's Peachwood sword at first glance. This was actually a subconscious action, which means that the relationship between the two of you is no trivial matter. Ajwa, is there any other evidence? Of course there is. Old Man Sun nodded. Director Zhou defeated the Demon King Sky-swallowing Toad back then, and now that Toad has turned into a dog. There are so many students at number 60 High, so why did this dog stay at classmate Wang Ling's house? It's obvious that this is your greeting gift to classmate Wang Ling. It's true that this Toad is a Demon King, but you were the one who defeated it back then, so it definitely listens to everything you say. By putting it at classmate Wang Ling's house, you're actually protecting him. Old Man Sun laughed. This kind of master's concern for his disciple is a little too obvious. Hearing this, the corners of Ajwa's mouth twitched. Mr. Sun is really smart and brave. Of course, there's also the decisive evidence, which is Director Zhu's close visit to classmate Wang Ling's house. Mr. Sun is following me? Ajwa frowned. It can't be considered tracking. It's just some technical methods. Old Man Sun said lightly, the metal pin to Director Zhu's chest actually has a tracking function. In the past, your badge location has frequently appeared at classmate Wang Ling's house. I'm afraid this has already surpassed the relationship between a senior and a junior, right? Hearing this, Ajwa already couldn't help applauding. As expected of Mr. Sun, your reasoning ability leaves me in the dust. It's just some insignificant tricks. I was able to sit in this position because of my extraordinary reasoning ability. Old Man Sun couldn't help but sigh when he said that. In the past he was dealing in elixirs. Now he was dealing in stocks. Elixirs were considered a physical industry, and now there were fully automated production machines. Other than rare elixirs, most elixirs could be produced automatically by machines, and there was not much manual skill involved. Over time, Sunny Yuan started to learn how to analyze stocks. The stock market was still the most exciting. Thanks to his logical analysis, Huagua Water Curtain Group had made a lot of money in the last few years. Director Zhou, if you're interested, you can listen to my stock lessons. Of course, these are top secret lessons for the group. Old Man Sun knows about stocks. It's just some insignificant analysis, and it's Jiang Xiaoche who's in charge. It's my secretary whom Director Zhou met earlier. Ajwa, although he didn't dare be 100% sure. He could roughly guess that this Jiang Xiaoche had most likely done the opposite of what Old Man Sun had said. Ajwa couldn't help sighing in his heart. It really wasn't easy for Huagua Water Curtain Group to grow to such a scale. He smiled bitterly. Mr. Sun came to confirm your identity with me today to ask about my disciple. Ajwa braced himself as he said this. At the same time he moaned and cried out in his heart, hoping that Wang Ling wouldn't blame him. Shifu. Disciple really didn't mean to take advantage of you. Even your father-in-law came to investigate. Disciple has to take the blame. Sunny Yuan was delighted to hear this. He had long known that Ajwa was a sensible person. It was also for this reason that he was deeply liked by Secretary Sunday. In fact, Sunny Yuan felt that even if he didn't help Audiobook pull in votes, he would sooner or later be able to sit at the top of the alliance on his own. I knew that Director Zhuo was a smart man. Old Man Sun was overjoyed. What this old man wanted to ask isn't anything important. I just wanted to ask about classmate Wang Ling's hobbies. Or his family's hobbies. Crispy noodle snacks, said Audiobook. What? Sunny Yuan thought he had heard wrong. It's a small snack, so that's how it is. Old Man Sun sighed. No wonder when classmate Wang went to the hospital to see how my family's Rongrong was doing, he didn't even look at the high-end snacks I had people prepare. Audiobook smiled. But ordinary crispy noodle snacks are already very difficult to catch my disciple's eye. That's easy, I can find someone to order them. I'll hire the best noodle chef in the world to make them on the spot. Mr. Sun is really generous, but if you really do this, my disciple might be disgusted. I know. Old Man Sun said, classmate Wang likes to keep a low profile. I'll have a noodle chef appear next to him without anyone noticing. Audiobook, Sunny Yuan, then what do classmate Wang's parents like? Audiobook, my disciple's father is an online entrepreneur. I know that. Monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Tips. Old Man Sun was excited. What's his pen name? I can arrange it for him right now. His pen name is Wang Situ. So he's Wang Situ. Old Man Sun was startled. Given his relationship with the head of state, he naturally knew that the latter had been chasing after the writings of someone called Wang Situ. It was just that Sunny Yuan had never expected the world to be so small. This Wang Situ was actually classmate Wang Ling's father. Chapter 1356. Audiobook hadn't expected Old Man Sun to be so concerned about his Shifu. However, after the conversation he felt that there was no need to be too wary of Sunny Yuan. Old Man Sun was indeed a deductive genius, but he was also someone who knew how to take care of other people's feelings. It was precisely because he knew his master's low-key personality that he had specially arranged for a time to ask him about the situation. Otherwise, with Old Man Sun's temper, he would have visited his in-laws with many bags. Strategy was a long-term plan. Feelings needed to be nurtured slowly. Old Man Sun understood this principle. The more he wished for his precious granddaughter to be able to truly obtain happiness, the more he wished for her. The more one couldn't use money and sugar-coated bullets to try to buy other people's feelings. This was an impolite behavior, and it was also a kind of disrespect to others. Thank you, Director Zhuo. My trip today wasn't in vain. I understand everything now. Before he left, Old Man Sun bowed respectfully to Audiobook. Director Zhuo, please rest assured about what happened today. Heaven and earth will know. I'll keep everything to myself. Mr. Sun, you're too polite. Audiobook smiled and returned the salute with cupped fists. Old Man Sun laughed out loud and shouted, Immortal luck prospers. Then he flicked his sleeves and left. Looking at Old Man Sun's retreating back, Audiobook heaved a long sigh of relief. Are you sure Brother Ling won't be angry? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal walked out of the office. He had been eavesdropping on the side for a long time. As long as we have crispy noodle snacks, everything is negotiable. Mr. Sun is a smart man, he should have some tricks up his sleeve. Audiobook rubbed his chin. In fact, he didn't dare to guarantee what would happen next. Elsewhere, Songhai First Military Medical Hospital. After being locked up for several days, Lotus Sun arranged for Zhao Qingxian to be bailed out and admitted to the hospital for a checkup. Earth was too dangerous. He had only just arrived here and had not done anything, yet he was already accused of forcibly molesting a male. How tragic could it be? Mr. Zhao, because we haven't been able to find your identity information so far, you are still under our strict surveillance. Before the bed, a police officer said with a solemn expression, after all the checks are done, you will be restricted to our specific apartment. You will be supervised by a special supervisor. Zhao Qingxian, then when can I get rid of the suspicion? That's hard to say. The police officer spread his hands and stared at Zhao Qingxian. Behave yourself. A doctor will come over later to examine your body. He wasn't worried that Zhao Qingxian would run away because Zhao Qingxian had the spirit shackles on his ankles. With most of his spiritual power restricted, Zhao Qingxian had nowhere to go. Helpless, Zhao Qingxian could only lie down obediently. As soon as the police officer left, Zhao Qingxian saw a seriously ill patient covered in bandages being pushed to the bed next to him by a female nurse. This person was none other than Fan Xing. After several surgeries by the hospital, Fan Xing's recovery was relatively good, but there was still a long time before he could fully recover. Of course, even if Fan Xing made a full recovery afterwards, Fan Xing was destined to have no happiness in his life. Brother? Bro. Zhao Qingxian tried to talk to Fan Xing. It wasn't because he was bored, but because he felt that he had found an opportunity from Fan Xing. Now he was being inexplicably monitored by the police and had even been charged with a groundless crime. With such a serious crime on him, his plans on Earth would be greatly hindered. In addition, the spirit shackles on his ankles suppressed most of his spiritual power. It definitely wouldn't be easy for him to escape. But in any case, he was a domain of the gods' cultivator. Even with the two anklet versions of the spirit shackles, it was still possible to cast some small spells. Now Fan Xing's body was ravaged and he was delirious, but this gave Zhao Qingxian a sliver of an opportunity. So, I can only try. Temporary soul-switching technique. Zhao Qingxian suddenly had a plan in his mind. The spell was actually a simplified version of the possession spell. When cast on a delirious person, the success rate would be greatly increased. Once it was cast successfully, the soul exchange effect would be realized within 72 hours. So, it didn't matter even if the person wasn't satisfied with the body. After 72 hours, the body would be swapped back. This was a simple body-swapping game. Zhao Qingxian used a simple spell to determine that Fan Xing wasn't completely immobile. It was just that his depression was hindering his movements. As for the specific situation, he just had to wait for the soul exchange to be completed and personally appraise it. He still had some pills that could help Fan Xing recover from his injuries quickly. These were all life-saving items he had brought from the domain of the gods, and their effects couldn't be compared to those on Earth. This wasn't the first time he had thought of leaving this fat body. Zhao Qingxian had ingested a lot of sugar since he was young because of the half-moon robe Xingongli. This caused Zhao Qingxian's body to expand abnormally, to the point where he couldn't control or restrain himself anymore. The rules in the domain of the gods were strict, and Zhao Qingxian had never dared think of possessing someone. Now, on Earth he had found an opportunity. Moreover, Fan Xing's facial features were fine. If he used this face to seduce Lu Qingyi, Zhao Qingxian felt that not only could he hide his identity, but he could also greatly increase his chances of success. Bro. I'm sorry. Zhao Qingxian thought about it. In the end, he finally made up his mind to make a move on Fan Xing. Fan Xing saw Zhao Qingxian reach out to him. His first reaction was naturally to struggle. But it was already too late. In an instant, a dazzling light burst out from the top of their heads. The soul exchange was complete. Fan Xing's soul returned to Zhao Qingxian's body, but his hand was still on Fan Xing's body. The young police officer turned pale with fright when he entered and hurriedly pulled Zhao Qingxian away. You pervert. I knew you wouldn't even let a man off. Fan Xing, who had been swapped into Zhao Qingxian's body, felt very wronged. He couldn't speak at all because Zhao Qingxian had cast a silence spell on him before the soul exchange, so Fan Xing couldn't speak for a while. Success. Zhao Qingxian had successfully seized Fan Xing's body. But after a simple inspection, the smile on Zhao Qingxian's face gradually froze. F***CK. This man actually didn't have balls. He had suffered a loss this time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.